All right, let's get this going.
Good evening from Belmont
So fucking low.
University in Nashville, Tennessee.
That's why.
I'm Kristen Welker of NBC News, and I
I'm Papa
welcome you
Gut.
to the final 2020 presidential debate between President Donald J. Trump and former Vice President Joe Biden.
Very cool.
Tonight's debate is sponsored by the Commission on Presidential Debates. It is conducted under
Nice.
health and safety protocols designed by the Commission's health security advisor. The audience here in the hall has promised to remain silent.
Wow.
No cheers, boos, or
Sounds
other
like Nazi
interruptions,
Germany to me.
except right now, as we welcome to the stage former Vice President Joe Biden.
Everybody clap.
And President Donald J. Trump.
Woo! Woo! Ah! We refuse. You better clap. You guys better clap, or I'm gonna delete this debate from the history books. I'll have him pull it down.
And I do want to say a very good evening to both of you. This debate will cover 6 major topics. At the beginning of each section, each candidate will have 2 minutes uninterrupted to answer my first question. The debate commission will then turn on their microphone only when it is their turn to answer. The commission will turn it off.
Oh, this is so
when
funny.
the 2 minutes have expired. After that, both microphones will remain on. But on behalf of the voters, I'm going to ask you to please.
You know what's so funny is that, like, I was saying it last time, like, if they really gave a shit, they would mute the mics, and they did it, but they didn't do it because, like, they necessarily wanted to. Like, they like the little bit of arguing and back and forth. It's exciting for people to watch. It's that Trump did it to such a degree that it made it, like, it made the debate, like, incoherent. Like, you couldn't, nothing. That's how bad it was.
Please speak one at a time. The goal is for you to hear each other and for the American people to hear every word of what you both have to say. And so with that, if you're ready, let's start.
Yeah, let's start.
We'll begin with the fight against the coronavirus. President Trump, the first question is for you. The country is heading into a dangerous new phase. More than 40,000 Americans are in the hospital tonight with COVID, including record numbers here in Tennessee. And since the two of you last shared a stage,
I'll say, this is a 10 I see. Am I right, guys? Haha, misogyny.
16,000 Americans have died from COVID. So please be specific. How would you lead the country during this next stage of the coronavirus crisis? 2 minutes, uninterrupted.
So, as you know, 2.2 million people modeled out were expected to die.
That's not true. Let's just establish it was 2.2 million people would have died if we did absolutely nothing. All right? Just so you guys know. All right? That's based on if we did literally nothing. We could have held our breaths when we walked past somebody, and that would have reduced the number. That's how that number is. All right? That's how exaggerated it is. That's how it's based on doing literally nothing.
We closed up the greatest economy in the world in order to fight this horrible disease that came from China. It's a worldwide pandemic. It's all over the world. You see the spikes
I'm okay
in
with him
Europe,
blaming China.
many other places right now. If you notice, the mortality rate is down 85%.
Let's just be honest. Let's just be clear here. The numbers are better in the blue states than the red states. And honestly, like, I know that Trump's taking credit for it. That's fine. But, like, the reality of the situation is that Trump was he was very slow to close. He was like, hey, states, you close if you want. And then when it was back to opening time, he's like, states, you guys have to start opening. The blue states said no. Their numbers are doing really well. And since they're bigger, more population dense areas, specifically like New York, that's why the spread wasn't so bad. Like, honestly, Trump had his ass saved by them not listening to him.
The excess mortality rate is way down and much lower than almost any other country. And we're fighting it, and we're fighting it hard. There is a spike. There was a spike in Florida, and it's now gone.
Yeah.
There was a very big spike in Texas. It's now gone. There was a very big spike in Arizona. It's now gone.
All red states,
and
huh?
there are some spikes and surges in other places. They will soon be gone. We have a vaccine that's coming. It's ready.
That's not ready.
It's going to be announced within weeks, and it's going to be delivered. We have Operation Warp Speed, which is the military is going to distribute the vaccine.
First and foremost, like, there's no way it's going to be done. All estimates point to next year, like in the summer, for it to actually be distributable. He's saying that because it's close to an election. He wants people to be like, yeah, Trump's doing a really good job.
I can tell you from personal experience that I was in the hospital. I had it. And
I'm
I got
immune to
better,
it.
And I will tell you that I had something that they gave me, a therapeutic, I guess they would call it.
I believe they call it
was a
stem
cure.
cell research is what they gave him.
I was in for a short period of time, and I got better very fast, or I wouldn't be here tonight. And now they say I'm immune. Whether it's 4 months or a lifetime, nobody's been able to say that. But I'm immune.
Okay.
More and more people are getting better. We have a problem that's a worldwide problem.
This isn't an
It's a
answer to how you're gonna move
worldwide
forward.
problem. But I've been congratulated by the heads of many countries on what we've been able to do. If you take a look at what we've done in terms of goggles and masks and gowns and everything else, and in particular ventilators, we're now making ventilators all over the world, thousands and
That's fine.
thousands a month, distributing them all over the world. It will go away, and as I say, we're rounding the turn, we're rounding the corner. It's going away.
Okay, former Vice President Biden, to you.
That really wasn't a
would you
response to
lead
how
our
we're gonna
country
deal with
out
it.
of this crisis in 2 minutes uninterrupted.
220,000 Americans dead. If you hear nothing else I say tonight, hear this. Anyone who's responsible for not taking control, in fact, not saying I take no responsibility initially, anyone who's responsible for that many deaths should not remain as President of the United States of America.
Well, I mean, like, listen, you can make the argument, like, Trump could have done better. Like I said, we started, he downplayed it, but he downplayed it because we needed time to develop infrastructure to combat the coronavirus, and people getting all worried and having a meltdown wasn't going to help with that. He should have, been more aggressive with China about figuring out where the origin points of the coronavirus were. Then he really didn't, he did shut down, a lot of movement between China and I believe Europe, which is I think was a huge positive step. I think he did it sooner than was recommended. But then, he wasn't aggressive enough about shutdowns. But my biggest issue, I think, right now is that he's not aggressive enough about saying wear a fucking mask, like the bare minimum. But he didn't do the worst job. It certainly could have been better. But this idea that like an Obama administration would have been like so much better, I think is just ignorant.
We're in a situation where there are 1,000 deaths a day now, 1,000 deaths a day. And there are over 70,000 new cases per day. Compared to what's going on in Europe, as the New England Medical Journal said, they're starting from a very low rate. We're starting from a very high rate. The expectation is we'll have another 200,000 Americans dead between now and the end of the year. If we just wore these masks, President,
I'm sure he's being honest, but like, how is it that if we have 1,000 deaths a day, there's not 200 days by the end of the year? I don't know. Maybe that's just me being
his own
ignorant
advisor told
American.
him we could save 100,000 lives. And we're in a circumstance where the president thus far and still has no plan, no comprehensive plan. What I would do is make sure we have everyone encouraged to wear a mask all the time. I would make sure we move in the direction of rapid testing, investing in rapid testing. I would make sure that we set up national standards as to how to open up schools and open up businesses so they can be safe, and give them the wherewithal, the financial resources to be able to do that. We're in a situation now where the New England Medical Journal, one of the most serious journals in the whole world, said for the first time ever that the way this president has responded to this crisis has been absolutely tragic. And so, folks, I will take care of this. I will end this. I will make sure we have a plan.
President Trump, I'd like to follow up with you in your comments. You talked about taking a therapeutic. I assume you're referencing Regeneron. You also said a vaccine will be coming within weeks.
Yes.
Is that a guarantee?
No, it's not a guarantee, but it will be by the end of the year. But I think it has a good chance. There are two companies, I think.
Before he's like, hey, we'll announce it within weeks. I mean, like, he's being, I guess, truthful, but it's not going to be there. He's trying to rush it to make it seem like he'll have it before the election, but he won't.
Within a matter of weeks, and it will be distributed very quickly.
Can you tell us which companies?
Johnson & Johnson is doing very well. Moderna is doing very well. Pfizer is doing very well. And we have numerous others.
I'm sure they're doing
And
well.
we also have others that we're working on very closely with other countries, in particular Europe.
Let me follow up with you, and because this is new information, you have said a vaccine is coming soon, within weeks now. Your own officials say it could take well into 2021 at the earliest for enough Americans to get vaccinated. And even then, they say the country will be wearing masks and distancing into 2022.
Which is a good
your
idea.
Timeline realistic?
No, I think my timeline's going to be more accurate. I don't know that they're depending on the military the way I do, but we have our generals lined up.
Okay, so she just said, like, hey, listen, we're not going to have vaccines for every American, which, by the way, is, I think, a general irrelevancy because I don't think most Americans will take the vaccine, or at least, like we have 330 million Americans, right? I mean, like, let's assume all of them would take it. I don't know if we give all the babies vaccines. I don't know. Do you think that everybody's going to want a vaccine? Like, especially one that quick? It's debatable. So we don't necessarily need enough vaccines for everybody, but still... the idea that it's like, hey, we don't have enough vaccine, or we won't have enough vaccines, and then Trump's like, you're underestimating the military. It's like, what the fuck's the military going to do? They're not going to create vaccines. They're just distributing them potentially under your plan. So who gives a shit about what the military can do?
Particular, that's the head of logistics, and this is a very easy distribution for him. He's ready to go as soon as we have the vaccine, and we expect to have 100 million vials. As soon as we have the vaccine, he's ready to go.
Vice President Biden, your
Right, but the problem is getting the vaccine to 100 million vials.
reaction, and just 40% of Americans say they would definitely agree to take a coronavirus vaccine if it was approved by the government. What steps would you take to give Americans confidence in a vaccine if it were approved?
Make sure it's totally transparent. Have the scientists of the world see it, know it, look at it, go through all the processes. And by the way, this is the same fellow who told you this is going to end by Easter last time. This is the same fellow who told you that, don't worry, we're going to end this by the summer. We're about to go into a dark winter, and he has no clear plan, and there's no...
See how racist Biden is? Who cares if the winter's black, Joe? It's okay. It doesn't mean it's an evil winter.
prospect
The
that
joke.
there's going to be a vaccine available for the majority of the American people before the middle of next year.
President Trump, your reaction, he says you
I don't
have no
think we're going
plan.
to have a dark winter at all. We're opening up our country. We've learned and studied and understand the disease, which we didn't at the beginning. When I closed and banned China from coming in heavily infected, and then ultimately Europe, but China was in January. Months later, he was saying I was xenophobic. I did it too soon. Now he's saying, oh, I should have, moved quicker. But he didn't move quicker. He was months behind me, many months behind me. And frankly, he ran the H1N1 swine flu, and it was a total disaster, far less lethal, but it was a total disaster. Had that had this kind of number,
I mean, that's a fair point.
700,000 people would be dead right now, but it was a far less lethal disease. Look, his own person who ran that for him, who, as you know, was his chief of staff, said it was catastrophic, it was horrible, we didn't know what we were doing. Now he comes up and he tells us how to do this. Also, everything that he said about the way every single move that he said we should make, that's what we've done. We've done all of it. But he was way behind us.
The mask
President
thing, not
Biden,
so
your
much.
response.
You got to
Our
force the
response
mask
is
thing.
He is xenophobic, but not because he shut down access from China. And he did it late after 40 countries had already done that. In addition to that, what he did, he made sure that we had 44 people that were in there in China trying to get to Wuhan. To
This part's
determine
very fair.
What exactly the source was. What did the president say in January? He said, no, he said, he's being transparent. The president of China is being transparent. We owe him a debt of gratitude. We have to thank him. And then what happened was we started talking about using the Defense Act to make sure we go out and get whatever is needed out there to protect people. And again, I go back to this. He had nothing. He did virtually nothing. And then he gets out of the hospital and he talks about, don't worry, it's all going to be over soon. Come on. There's not another serious scientist in the world who thinks it's going to be over soon.
President Trump, your
I
reaction?
say over soon. I say we're learning to live with it. We have no choice. We can't lock ourselves up in a basement like Joe does. He has the ability to lock himself up. I don't know. He's obviously made a lot of money someplace.
I don't know what the money. Oh, because he can whatever. Listen, okay, so Trump's basically going to go into a whole rant about like herd immunity and all that kind of like he's going to touch on it. He kind of refused to talk about it at his town hall. The thing is that like I understand the idea that hey, maybe we need to open up. I do get it. People are depressed. He's going to go on to talk about mental health. Fantastic points. The problem is that he's not even promoting the usage of a mask, which is the bare minimum. If Trump was saying everything the same, but like, hey, you should wear a mask when you go out, I would be totally on board with Trump, but he's not. He's saying he's lying about some study that says that like the masks are basically irrelevant. And he keeps talking about how Dr. Fauci said masks don't help, even though that was walked back. That was something that the CDC lied about
Everybody has
at the
this
beginning of the
thing
election.
about living in a basement.
Or rather, the
People
beginning of
can't
the
do that.
coronavirus.
By the way, I, as the president, couldn't do that. I'd love to put myself in the basement or in a beautiful room in the White House and go away for a year and a half until it disappears. I can't do that. And Kirsten, every meeting I had, and I'd meet a lot of families, including Gold Star families and military families. Every meeting I had, and I had to meet them. I had to. It would be horrible to have canceled everything. I said, you know, this is dangerous, and you catch it. And you know, I caught it. I learned a lot.
And now he's immune to
Great
it.
Doctors, great hospitals.
Yeah.
And now I recovered. 99.9 of young people recover. 99% of people recover. We have to recover.
Can we just like talk about how if the statistic is that 99% of people recover, if this spread to all 330 million Americans, that's 3.3 million Americans dead. Like, that's why I don't like the downplaying aspect of it. It's just not, it's not good.
We can't close up our nation. We have to open our school, and we can't close up our nation, or you're not going to have a nation.
And of course, the CDC has said young people can get sick with COVID-19 and can pass it. Vice President Biden, I want to talk broadly.
That's like the bigger issue, is young people getting it and then killing their grandparents. Unless you don't give a shit about old people dying, which you have an argument, I suppose, you know. Yeah, old people die and then they're not on the system anymore, right?
About strategy, though. You have
Can I respond to that?
30 seconds, please, and then
30
I have a
seconds.
question.
No, number one, he says that we're learning to live with it. People are learning to die with it.
Oh,
You
stop.
folks home will have an empty chair at the kitchen
Oh,
table.
this is, I don't like
That
this.
man or wife going to bed tonight.
Listen, it's a hard truth that we have to learn to live with it. So, like, him being like, you're learning to die with, like, that's just a scare tactic, and you're just politicizing the coronavirus, and you're trying to weaponize people's emotions.
And reaching over to try to touch their, out of habit, where their wife or husband was, is gone. Learning to live with it. Come on. We're dying with it because he's never said, you said it's dangerous. When's the last time? Is it really dangerous still? Are we dangerous? You tell the people it's dangerous now? What should they do about the danger? And you say, I take no responsibility.
Let me talk about your two.
Excuse me, I
very quickly.
take full responsibility. It's not my fault that it came here. It's China's fault. And
I like that. He's like, I'll take full responsibility. It's China's fault, which he's not wrong about that. It's just funny the way he worded
You know
that.
what? It's not Joe's fault that it came here either. It's China's fault. They kept it from going into the rest of China for the most part, but they didn't keep it from coming out to the world, including Europe.
Well, that
and
part,
Australia.
see, the fact that that's not the part that I have an issue with as so much, right? So the fact that it exists and it started in China isn't why I blame China. It's that they covered it up for so long, and they didn't allow us like a proper response. Like, imagine we knew about it. Like, they were saying as early as like December or earlier than that is when China knew about this virus. Imagine we knew about it then, and we had like an extra 3 or 4 months to prepare. That probably would have cut down our death rates by a massive amount.
Vice President Biden.
The fact is that when we knew it was coming, when it hit, what happened? What did the president say? He said, don't worry, it's going to go away. Be gone by Easter. Don't worry, the warm weather. Don't worry, maybe inject bleach. He said he was kidding when he said that, but a lot of people thought it was serious.
If a lot of people thought that was serious, then how many people did it? That's my only question. How many people died from injecting bleach into themselves? That's the only way that you could make that argument, like, that people actually thought it was true, is if they legitimately did it.
A whole range of things the president has said. Even today, he thinks we are in control. We're about to lose 200,000 more people.
President Trump.
Look, perhaps just to finish this, I was kidding on that, but just to finish this, when I closed, he said I shouldn't have closed. And that went on for months. What Nancy Pelosi said the same.
See, the thing is the tweet he's referencing is a tweet where he's called Trump xenophobic, and what Trump said in that tweet was that he's going to close the country down and that it's the Chinese virus. So you could have made the argument that Biden was responding by calling him xenophobic for saying it's the Chinese virus. The problem is, and this is a political problem, is that Biden can't defend himself because Biden, if he defends himself, then he basically gives a win to Trump. he can't be like, no, I didn't say that it was too soon. You know what I mean? He has to like pretend like he never said it. He can't say like, oh no, you shut down when you were supposed to, because that just makes Trump look better. It's just like a weird political spot that he's in.
Same thing. She was dancing on the streets in Chinatown in San Francisco. But when I closed,
Yeah, I think
he
that's
said,
true.
This is a terrible thing, you
Nobody really was taking it that seriously.
xenophobic. I think he called me racist even. And
I
because
don't
I
think
was
he did.
closing it to China. Now he says I should have closed it earlier. It just, Joe, it doesn't work.
I didn't say either of those things.
You
I didn't
Well, you
certainly
did.
coercive,
You
and
certainly
I
did.
I talked about his xenophobia in a different context.
What
It wasn't
context?
about closing the border to Chinese coming to the United States.
All right, I want to talk about both of your different strategies to
He
handling
thought
this.
I shouldn't have closed the border.
Well, let's-
That's obvious.
Do you want to respond to that quickly, Vice President
No.
Biden? Okay. Let's talk about your different strategies
No,
for dealing with
that's
this.
the
Mr.
best
Vice
part.
President, you suggested you would support new shutdowns if scientists recommended it. What do you say to Americans who are fearful that the cost of shutdowns, the impact on the economy, the higher rates of hunger, depression, domestic and substance abuse outweighs the risk of exposure to the virus?
What I would say is I'm going to shut down the virus, not the country. It's his ineptitude that caused the country to have to shut down in large part. Why
No.
businesses have gone under, why schools are closed, why
So what's so funny about that comment is that like the problem with Trump is that he didn't shut down soon enough as far as like the country, right? He shut down trade probably at a good time, my understanding, or not trade. He shut down, people coming in and out of China, whatever. But he didn't shut down the country soon enough. And that's one of his biggest criticisms against him. And now Biden is saying like that it's Trump's fault for shutting down. It just doesn't make any sense, because now he's like, oh, Trump is the one. Trump doesn't want to shut down. All right.
so many people.
Your argument is that like Trump is not being intelligent about the reopening. He's trying to force states open so that he can get the economy running again, and he's not being very good about the reopening.
People have lost their
Which is
living,
what Biden
and why
wants
they're
to do.
concerned. Those other concerns are real. That's why he should have been, instead of in a sand trap in his golf course, he should have been negotiating with Nancy Pelosi and the rest of the Democrats and Republicans about what to do about the acts they were passing for billions of dollars to make sure people had the capacity.
But you haven't ruled out more shutdowns.
Well, no, I'm not shutting down the name, but there are, look,
What?
we need standards. The standard is if you have a reproduction rate in a community that's above a certain level, everybody says, slow up, more social distancing, do not open bars and do not open gymnasiums, do not open
that's-
until
yeah,
you
it's
get
more
this
shutdowns.
under more control. But when you do open, give the people the capacity to be able to open and have the capacity to do it safely. For example, schools. Schools, they need a lot of money to open. They need to deal with ventilation systems. They need to deal with smaller classes, more teachers, more pods.
Let's see,
And
more online
he refused
infrastructure.
to support that money, or at least up to now.
I mean, I would imagine that like online schools is probably more economically or more financially realistic.
Let's talk about
But
schools.
the
President
online
Trump,
school
I
is
think we have to
tough.
respond if I-
I wish they would have asked him about like how damaging online school is to young kids, because there's so many young kids that are struggling right now, and like it shows you how disconnected people are.
Mine?
please, and then I have a follow-up.
Thank you, and I appreciate that. Look, all he does is talk about shutdowns, but forget about him. His Democrat governors, Cuomo in New York, you look at what's going on in California, you look at
Yeah, they're
Pennsylvania,
doing real
North
well.
Carolina,
New York's doing great.
Democrats all, they're shut down so tight, and they're dying. They're dying.
No, they're not.
And he supports all.
The numbers in places like New York are really good. They're actually like the best in the country. And if they hadn't done those shutdowns, Trump wouldn't be able to brag about like lower mortality rates and lower transfer rates, because those are the big population dense states where, especially New York, where a lot of trade goes through, and that's really the epicenter of how the coronavirus is going to spread.
All these people, all he talks about is shutdowns. No, we're not going to shut down, and we have to open our schools.
New York is
And
doing
it's
well.
like,
I
as
don't-
an
yeah,
example,
it is.
I have
I
a
don't-
young son. He also tested positive.
Guys, New York is doing well. How are you guys are saying it's so far gone? You guys are just emphatically incorrect.
By the time I spoke to the doctor the second time, he was fine. It just went away. Young people, I guess it's their
No,
immunity.
New York. Why are you guys memeing me? Like New York did the best. Like New York has like the lowest transfer rates. The number of people dying is not the same as like the percentage of people dying. New York has very high population dense. It wasn't going to be good overall, but New York has the best numbers. Like overall, New York has the best numbers. You guys are just you guys have to keep it in context. New York literally has the best numbers. New York is the literal center of trade in the United States. You wouldn't get a single piece of trade or any product from any other country without it going through New York. So the fact of the matter is New York was going to get hit the hardest, and they still did like the best number-wise. It's population dense. Of course, it's going to have a high number of people dying because, again, it's going to be where it starts and stops. Cuomo did a good job. You guys have to be contextually accurate. Okay? It's not like there's fucking trade going through goddamn Alabama. Okay? New York has a crazy amount of trade going through it. It's going to have the most contact, and they still did amazingly in New York. Cuomo, I'm not a particular fan of, but he did a good job. Honestly.
Let me follow up with you, President Trump. You've demanded schools open in person and insist they can do it safely. But just yesterday, Boston became the latest city to move its public school system entirely online after a coronavirus spike. What is your message to parents who worry that sending their children to school will endanger not only their kids, but also their teachers and families?
I want to open the schools. The transmittal rate to the teachers is very small, but I want to open the schools. We have to open our country. We're not going to have a country. You can't do this. We can't keep this country closed. This is a massive country with a massive economy. People are losing their jobs. They're committing suicide. There's depression, alcohol, drugs at a level that nobody's ever seen before.
This is fair.
There's abuse, tremendous abuse. We have to open our country. You know, I've said it often.
It's just the fact that the way that Trump wants
the
to
problem itself.
That's fair, but the way Trump wants to open is the problem. He's not being very cautious about it. He's trying to be very aggressive about opening to all the states, and then the states that are listening to him are having huge spikes.
And that's what's happening. And he wants to close down. He'll close down the country if one person in our massive bureaucracy
I don't think-
says we should close it down.
I don't
Vice
think
President
that's
Biden,
true.
your
Most
response.
Certainly not
people
true. We ought to be able to walk and chew gum at the same time. We ought to be able to safely open
a Western
when
reference
they
stuff
need
like
resources to open. You need to be able to, for example, if you're going to open a business, have social distancing within the business. You need to have, if you have a restaurant, you need to have plexiglass dividers so people cannot infect one another.
That's
you
fair.
need to be in a position where you can take testing rapidly and know whether a person is in fact infected. You need to be able to trace. You need to be able to provide all the resources that are needed to do this. And that is not inconsistent with saying that what we're going to make sure that we open safely. And by the way, all you teachers out there, not that many of you are going to die, so don't worry about it. Come on.
President Trump, let me follow
What?
up with you quickly.
By the way, I
on-
will say this. If you go and look at what's happened to New York,
Oh my
it's
God,
a ghost
stop.
town. It's a ghost town.
Well, yeah, because it's shut down pretty well, so people don't die.
And when you talk about plexiglass, these are restaurants that are dying. These are businesses with no money.
What?
Putting up plexiglass is unbelievably expensive.
Okay, so
and
what?
It's not the answer. I mean, you're going to sit there
Why?
in a cubicle wrapped around with plastic. It's
No plexiglass. No, there's no what. Every place I've gone to is like shut off. They have like they put up wood and like some, I guess maybe it's plexiglass or some kind of like hard plastic barrier, and everybody's fine. I don't give a fuck. That's fine to me.
these are businesses that are dying, Joe. You can't do that to people. You
But you
just
could-
can't. Take a look at New York and what's happened to my wonderful city for
And like, yeah, why doesn't Trump just plexiglass is so expensive? Why not just give businesses like loans for plexiglass?
so many years. I loved it. It was vibrant. It's dying. Everyone's leaving New York.
Take a look
Vice
at what
President
New
Biden.
York has done in terms of turning the curve down.
That's true. People are leaving New York. A lot of them are coming out to Long Island. But again, that's because it's going to it's the epicenter because of like how like impactful it is trade wise.
Down in terms of the number of people dying.
Yeah,
and
see?
I don't look at this in terms of the way he does. Blue states and red states. They're all the United States. And look at the states that are having such a spike in the coronavirus. They're the red states. They're the states in the Midwest. They're the
true.
states in the upper Midwest. That's where the spike is occurring significantly. But they're all Americans. They're all Americans. And what we have to do is say, wear these masks, number one. Make sure we get the help that the
Fair.
businesses need, that has money's already been passed to do that. It's been out there since the beginning of the summer, and nothing's happened.
President, New York has lost more than
It's a good point. He's like, I don't care if you're a red or blue state, but also the red states are doing worse.
40,000 people.
Sure.
11,000 people in nursing homes.
President Trump, what
when you
about-
say spike,
Yeah, because again, it's just population dense.
take a look at what's happening in Pennsylvania, where they've had it closed. Take a look at what's happening with your friend in Michigan, where her husband's the only one allowed to do anything. It's been like a prison. Now it was just ruled unconstitutional. Take a look at North Carolina. They're having spikes, and they've been closed, and they're getting killed financially. We can't let that happen, Joe. You can't let that happen. We have to open up. And we understand the disease. We have to protect our seniors. We have to protect.
What's bizarre is that Joe Biden's talking about opening up with particular conditions like plexiglass, and then Trump is just interpreting that as like, whoa, we have to open, like that he's saying we shouldn't open up at all. And it's weird.
our elderly. We have to protect, especially our seniors with heart problems and diabetes problems, and we will protect them. We have the best testing in the world by far. That's why we have so many cases.
Let me follow up
It's a
with you
joke.
before we move on to our next section.
I'm so confused. Like, how do you protect them without putting measures in, like wearing masks?
President Trump, this week you called Dr. Anthony Fauci, the nation's best-known infectious disease expert, quote, a disaster. You described him and other medical experts as, quote, idiots. If you're not listening to them, who are you listening to as you fight this?
I'm listening to all of them, including Anthony. I get along very well with Anthony, but he did say, don't wear a mask.
Yeah, like 6 months ago. Okay, so just so you guys know, he always brings this up. The CDC said that masks were ineffective very early on, right? And it was a lie. It turned out that they had said that, apparently, just so that hospitals and doctors and whatnot could get more masks and other, equipment to handle the coronavirus better. So they downplayed it and they lied to the American people. Now that, they were saying, oh, the molecules, the corona molecules are so small, they'll go through a mask, all this other bullshit. Meanwhile, hospitals were dragging up masks as much as possible. So, yeah, did he say that? Sure, but he walked that back already. So, let's stop pretending he said it.
He did say, as you know, this is not going to be a problem. I think he's a Democrat, but that's okay. He said this is not going to be a problem. We are not going to have a problem at all. When Joe says that, I said, Anthony Fauci said, and others, and many others, and I'm not knocking him a lot. Nobody knew. Look, nobody knew what this thing was. Nobody knew where it was coming from, what it was.
Someone in my chat said he meant lock down the high-risk people and reopen the rest. I don't think that he meant that because Trump isn't actually giving out, a coherent response to this. So, you're assigning that value because you want him to be saying that, but Trump's really not giving out anything. He's really doesn't have a plan for the coronavirus other than, we need to reopen. So, you guys are giving him too much of the benefit of the doubt. You could be a Trump supporter, but be a realistic Trump supporter,
learned a lot. But Anthony said, don't wear masks. Now he wants to wear masks. Anthony also
Yeah,
said,
there you go. Now he wants to wear masks.
exact words. Here's his exact words. This is no problem. This is going to go away soon. So he's allowed to make mistakes. He happens to be a good person.
Vice President Biden, your response quickly, and then we're going to move on to the next section.
The response is that think about what the president knew in January and didn't tell the American people. He was told this was a serious virus that spread in the air, and it was much worse than the flu. He went on record and said to one of your colleagues, recorded, that in fact he knew how dangerous it was, but he didn't want to tell us. He didn't want to tell us because he didn't want us to panic. He didn't want us. Americans don't panic. He panicked. But guess what? In the meantime, we find out in the New York Times the other day that, in fact, his folks went to Wall Street and said this is a really dangerous thing. And a memo out of that meeting, not from his administration, but from some of the brokers, said sell short because we got to get moving. It's a dangerous problem.
Well, this is
I don't know. That doesn't add up to me. Only because Trump has one of the reasons. Listen, Trump was downplaying in the beginning so that we had time to build infrastructure to fight against this because you need particular factories with particular certifications to do so. But he was also trying not to have the stock market crash. So why would Trump go out of his way to tell Wall Street that things were going really poorly if he didn't want them to think that? That just seems bizarre to me.
I'm going to give you 30 seconds to respond, and then we're
the
going
Wall
to
Street
move
one.
on.
I don't know. Somebody went to Wall Street. You're the one that takes all the money from Wall Street. I don't take it.
I
You
have.
have raised a lot
stupid.
of money, tremendous amounts of money. And every time you raise money, deals are made, Joe. I could raise so much more money. As president and as somebody that knows most of those people, I could call the heads of Wall Street, the heads of every company in America. I would blow away every record, but I don't want to do that because it puts me in a bad position. And then you bring up Wall Street. You shouldn't be bringing up Wall Street because you're the one that takes the money from Wall Street, not me. I could blow away your records that, like you wouldn't believe. We don't need money. We have plenty of money. In fact, we beat Hillary Clinton with a tiny fraction of the money that she was able.
All right, gentlemen, we're going to move on.
Average
We're gonna-
contribution, $43.
All right, we're going to move on to our next
Okay.
section, which is national
I don't got
security.
$43.
And I do want to start
Shit,
with the
dude.
security of our elections and some breaking news from overnight. Just last night, top intelligence officials confirmed again that both Russia and Iran are working
They're
to
boys.
influence this election. Both countries have obtained U.S. voter registration information, these officials say, and Iran sent intimidating messages to Florida voters. This question goes to you, Mr. Vice President. What would you do to put an end to this threat? You have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
I made it clear, and I ask everyone else to take the pledge. I made it clear that any country, no matter who it is, that interferes in American elections will pay a price. They will pay a price. And it's been overwhelmingly clear this election, I won't even get into the last one, this election,
Why not?
that Russia has been involved, China has been involved to some degree, and now we learned that Iran is involved. They will pay a price if I'm elected. They're interfering with American sovereignty. That's
think
what's
that we're
going
gonna-
on right now. They're interfering with American sovereignty. And to the best of my knowledge, I don't think the president said anything to Putin about it. I don't think he's talking to him a lot. I don't think he said a word. I don't know why he hadn't said a word to Putin about it. And I don't know what he has recently said, if anything, to the Iranians. My guess is he'd probably be more outspoken with regard to the Iranians. But the point is this, folks. We are in a situation where
Probably.
we
It's kind of a funny jab because Trump backed off the nuclear deal. So it's the subtext there was that Trump is like afraid of Russia, I guess, to an extent.
have foreign countries trying to interfere in the outcome of our election. His own national security advisor told him that what is happening with his buddy, I will. His buddy, Rudy Giuliani, he's being used as a Russian pawn. He's being fed information that is Russian, that is not true. And then what happens? Nothing happens. And then you find out that everything that's going on here about Russia is wanting to make sure that I do not get elected the next president of the United States because they know I know them and they know me.
Is that true? I mean, I don't know if that's substantiated.
I don't understand why this president is unwilling to take on Putin when he's actually paying bounties to kill American soldiers in Afghanistan, when he's engaged in activities that are trying to destabilize all of NATO. I don't know why he doesn't do it, but it's worth asking the question, why isn't that being done? Any country that interferes with us will, in fact, pay a price because they're affecting our sovereignty.
President Trump, same question to you. Let me ask the question. You're going to have 2 minutes to respond. For 2 elections in a row now, there has been substantial interference from foreign adversaries. What would you do in your next term to put an end to this? 2 minutes
Well,
uninterrupted.
let me respond to the first part, as Joe answered. Joe got $3.5 million from Russia, and it came through Putin because he was very friendly with the former mayor
I don't
of
know
Moscow.
if that's
He was the
true.
mayor of Moscow's wife, and you got $3.5 million. Your family got $3.5 million, and someday you're going to have to explain why did you get 3.5. I never got any money from Russia. I don't get money from Russia. Now, about your thing last night, I knew all about that, and through John Ratcliffe, who was fantastic, he said the one thing that's common to both of them. They both want you to lose because there has been nobody tougher to Russia. Between the sanctions, nobody tougher than me on Russia. Between the sanctions, between all of what I've done with NATO, I've got the NATO countries to put up an extra $130 billion, going to $420 billion a year. That's to guard against Russia. I sold, while he was selling pillows and sheets, I sold tank busters to Ukraine. There has been nobody tougher on Russia than Donald Trump. And I'll tell you, they were so.
Yeah, apparently
angry
it's not
the
even true,
submarine
the
port,
$3.5
you remember that very well.
million.
During your term, during you and Barack Obama, they took over a big part of what should have been Ukraine. You handed it to them, but you were getting a lot of money from Russia. They were paying you a lot of money, and they probably still are. But now, with what came out today, it's even worse. All of the emails, the horrible emails of the kind of money that you were raking in, you and your family. And Joe, you were vice president when some of this was happening, and it should have never happened. And I think you owe an explanation to the American people. Why is it? Somebody just had a news conference a little while ago who was essentially supposed to work with you and your family, but what he said was damning. And regardless of me, I think you have to clean it up and talk to the American people. Maybe you can do it right now.
Vice President Biden, you may respond.
Please stay here.
And then I do want to follow up on the election security.
I have not taken a penny from any foreign source ever in my life. We learned that this president paid 50 times the tax in China, has a secret bank account with China, does business in China, and in fact is talking about me taking money. I've not.
Well, the China thing was that he set up a bank in China so that he could potentially like do business in China and like open up hotels, but like he ended that like in 2015, I think.
Not taken a single
Like
penny
2
from any
years.
country whatsoever, ever. Number one. Number two, This is a president. I have released all of my tax returns. 22 years.
That's fair.
22 years of my tax return. You have not released a single solitary year of your tax return. What are you hiding? Why are you unwilling? The foreign countries are paying you a lot. Russia's paying you a lot. China's.
Well, actually, the whole Russia thing. So specifically when it comes to Russia and his tax returns, it's already been confirmed that like even the New York Times had said when they looked through all the information that they got, that there was no connection to Russia. So like that's just like an incorrect statement. I mean, it's a conspiracy statement. Just the same that the statement that you received $3.5 million from Russia is a conspiracy statement from Trump.
It's paying you a lot. And your hotels and all your businesses all around the country, all around the world. And China's building a new road to a new a golf course you have overseas. So what's going on here? Why don't release your tax return or stop talking about corruption?
President Trump, your response.
First of all, I called my accountants, underwrote it. I'm going to release them as soon as we can. I want to do it, and it'll show how successful, how great this company is. But much more importantly than that, people were saying,
I mean, listen, like everybody keeps saying he could release his tax returns even though he's in audit, but like, you know, no good lawyer worth his shit is going to tell Trump to release his tax returns until the audit's done. It's just how it works, unfortunately. It's a jaded political system.
$750. I asked them a week ago, I said, what did I pay? They said, sir, you prepaid tens of millions of dollars. I prepaid.
There's no way.
Tens, over
I
the
don't
last
believe
number of
that.
years, tens of millions of dollars I prepaid. Because at some point they think it's an estimate. They think I may have to pay tax. So I already prepaid it. Nobody told me that.
Did your accountant
Nobody
tell you
told
when
you
you
that.
could release
Excuse
them?
me. And it wasn't written whenever they write this. They keep talking about $750, which I think is a filing fee. But let me just tell you, I prepaid millions and millions of dollars in taxes. Number one. Number two, I don't make money from China. You do. I don't make money from Ukraine. You do. I don't make money from Russia. You made $3.5 million, Joe.
It's not a substantiated claim. I can't even really find anything accurate about it other than the Facebook post alleging that he got $3.5 million.
Son gave you. They even have a statement that we have to give 10% to the big man. You're the big man, I think. I don't know. Maybe you're not. But you're the big man, I think. Your son said we have to give 10% to the big man. Joe, what's that all about? It's terrible.
All right, gentlemen, I want to ask you both some
fuck?
questions
I have
about
to
all of this.
respond
But
to
I'm going to let you both respond very quickly. You just said you spoke to your accountant
Yes.
about potentially releasing your taxes. Did he tell you when you can release them? Do you
As
have
soon
a
as the audit is
deadline
done.
for when you're going to release
I
them to the
get
American
treated
people?
worse than the Tea Party got treated. Because
you
I have a
know
lot
that.
of people in there, deep down in the IRS,
Oh,
they treat me
God.
horribly. We made a deal, it was all settled until I decided to run for president.
I'd never heard him make that claim before that he had made a deal that was settled. This is the first time I'm seeing that.
get treated very badly by the IRS, very unfairly. But we had a deal all done. As soon as we're completed with the deal, I want to release it. But I have paid millions and millions of dollars, and it's worse than paying. I paid in advance. It's called prepaying your taxes. I paid in advance.
I want to ask you both about
I
questions
don't
regarding
think
the
that's
potential
true.
foreign
There's no
entanglements
way
and
that's
questions
true.
that have been raised to give you both a chance
Some
to
point
talk
that's
about this
true.
more broadly. Respond very quickly, and then I'll get to my question.
Why did he's been saying this for 4 years? Show us. Just show us. Stop playing around. You've been saying for 4 years you're going to release your taxes. Nobody knows, Mr. President. What they do know is you're not paying your taxes, or you're paying taxes that are so low. When last time he said what he paid, he
Listen, first and foremost, we've already established no lawyer's going to let him release his tax returns yet. Also, though, like who wrote the tax code that allowed Trump to pay like no taxes? And like that's the thing is that like there's some questionable shit in there of tax avoidance or like dodging taxes in like bad ways. But overall, like he's able to get off of with all these write-offs and everything is because of the shitty tax code that allows businesses to fuck people.
He said, I only pay that little because I'm smart. I know how to game the system.
Yeah, that's what you did doing. It's what happens.
Come on, folks.
So,
Listen, I'm going to write off everything I got. Everything I bought this year that I can write off for my taxes, I'm going to write it off. Like that's that's the goal, is to pay as little of the tax as possible because humans on an individual level are selfish. Okay? But the reality of the situation is that we need to have a government that's still like, hey, you got to pay your taxes. That's the whole point.
President Trump, and then I want to get to two questions to both of you on this.
I was put through a phony witch hunt for 3 years.
Now,
It started before I even got elected.
the
They spied on my campaign.
the whole Robert Mueller thing is like it's like feels like a fucking fever dream, right? Because it was based off the dossier that seemed to be rather questionable, as well as the fact that like what was it, Papadopoulos, whatever the fuck the guy's name is, Andrew Papadopoulos, I don't know, is talking shit to like one of our allies about working with Russia, and it was such a crazy situation. It was so weird. And like Trump wasn't being transparent about it. He kept trying to fire people that were attached to it, and there were a bunch of people indicted for different things. And oh, it was such a mess. I don't think it was a witch hunt, though. Honestly, I mean, it's so funny because like conservatives are always like, oh, like when it comes to stop and frisk laws, they're like, if you got nothing to hide, then you shouldn't be worried about getting stopped and frisked. And it's like, well, if you got nothing to hide, like even if you're a Trump supporter and you love Trump, like he's a little shady. The shit that he does is shady. He's a businessman. Businessmen are inherently shady. It's a problem. So like him getting spied on, why is it so bad? He still won. So clearly whatever magical conspiracy that existed didn't work.
No president should ever have to go through what I went through. Let me just say this. Mueller,
And I don't think it was a witch hunt. I think that Mueller, here's what I think. I think that the investigation was reasonable, and I think it needed to happen. But the problem was that you had Democrats, just like fucking Maxine Waters, going absolutely ballistic, saying impeach Trump every single day during an investigation, right? See, in my area, people were like, yeah, let's have the investigation done, but people need to shut the fuck up about it because, like, it needs to be done. Stop weaponizing it like a lot of, like, progressives did, like a lot of Democrats did. They weaponized the investigation until it was done, before it was done. That's the bigger problem. The investigation itself was fine. It was politicizing it from Democrats that was the issue.
and 18 angry Democrats and FBI agents all over the place spent $48 million. They went through everything I had, including my tax returns, and they found absolutely no collusion and nothing wrong. $48 million. I guarantee you, if I spent $1 million on you, Joe, I could find plenty wrong. Because the kind of things that you've done and the kind of monies that your family has taken, I mean, your brother made money in Iraq, millions of dollars. Your other brother made a fortune, and it's all through you, Joe. And they say you get some of it, and you do live very well. You have houses all over the place. You live very well.
All right, gentlemen, let me just ask some questions about all of this broadly. Vice President Biden, there have been questions about the work your son has done in China and for a Ukrainian energy company when you were vice president. In retrospect,
you guys notice that all the women in these have to wear these shoulder things? It makes them look broader. It's to make them look a little more masculine. Toxic masculinity, guys.
was anything about those relationships inappropriate or unethical?
Nothing was unethical. Here's what.
Well, listen. It's nepotism at its finest. I mean, it's the reality. It's like a way of life. It's, I suppose, unfortunate, but we've all engaged in nepotism before. Having a friend or a family member get a job. You know, is it shady? Probably, but is it, anything against what the rest of you would have done? Like, if you were president of the United States and you had the ability to get your son a decent job, he was qualified for the job, right? He was a lawyer. You'd do it. You'd do it. Just saying.
With regard to Ukraine, we had this whole question about whether or not, because he was on the board, I later learned of Burisma, a company, that somehow I had done something wrong. Yet every single solitary person, when he was going through his impeachment, testifying under oath who worked for him, said, I did my job impeccably. I carried out U.S. policy. Not one single solitary thing was out of line. Not a single thing, number one. Number two, the guy who got in trouble in Ukraine was this guy trying to bribe the Ukrainian government to say something negative about me.
That's good. That's kind of true. So let's so you guys know, it was like a fact that Trump was trying to withhold money, like aid from Ukraine until they investigated Joe Biden. Now people say like, oh, maybe the investigation should have happened, and maybe it should have. But you can't withhold funds for that kind of shit. And I would move further with people who are skeptical about what I just said to ask you this question. If there was a need for an investigation done in the Ukraine on Hunter Biden, why did Trump wait until Biden started running for president to push it? Why didn't he do it when he got into office? Why did he wait right when Joe Biden announced he was running? All of a sudden, oh, we got to investigate Biden. You get what I'm saying? Not exactly the best timing.
Because it never, ever, ever happened. My son has not made money in terms of this thing about, what are you talking about? China. I have not had it. The only guy made money from China is this guy. He's the only one. Nobody else has made money from China.
President Trump, let me ask my question to you.
But could I just one thing?
Very quickly.
His son didn't have a job for a long time, was sadly no longer in the military service. I won't get into that. And he didn't have a job. As soon as he
that was
became
nice of him
president,
not to drag his son.
Burisma, not the best reputation in the world. I hear they paid him $183,000 a month. Listen to this, $183,000, and they gave him a $3 million upfront payment.
All right.
And he had no energy.
I'm going to let the vice president respond to that quickly, and then I need to get to.
Well, he was a lawyer for it, so I don't know if he necessarily needed energy experience. I mean, part of the reason why they probably gave him the job was because his dad was the vice president, so they had better access to the president. There's also a lot of corruption in Ukraine, so it could go either way. Because apparently Biden dismissed a particular investigator who wanted to investigate him and his son because he was corrupt, which is probably true. It's hard to get to the bottom of it. There really could be some kind of a conflict there. It's really hard to navigate it.
Question to you.
No basis for that. Everybody investigated that. No one said anything he did was wrong in Ukraine.
Okay,
I
President
don't think
Trump,
anybody investigated that.
Office, you've never divested from your business. You've personally promoted your properties abroad. A report this week, which was referenced, does indicate that your company has a bank account in China. So how can voters know that you don't have any foreign conflicts of interest?
Well, I closed that.
And they're all listed, and they're all over the place. I mean, I was a businessman doing business. The bank account you're referring to, which is everybody knows about it, it's listed. The bank account was in 2013. That's what it was. It was open to do. It was closed in 2015, I believe. And then I decided, because I was thinking about doing a deal in China like millions of other people. I was thinking about it, and I decided I'm not going to do it. Didn't like it. I decided not to do it. Had an account open, and I closed it.
Okay.
Excuse me. And then, unlike him, where he's vice president and he does business, I then decided to run for president after that. That was before. So I closed it before I even ran for president, let alone became president. Big difference. He is the vice president of the United States, and his son, his brother, and his other brother are getting rich. They're like a vacuum cleaner. They're sucking
Okay,
up money
President
every
Trump,
place
thank
he
you. We
goes.
do need to move
true.
on. I do want to ask you, Vice President Biden, about China. Let's talk about China more broadly. Of course, President Trump has said that they should pay for not being fully transparent in regards to the coronavirus. If you were president, would you make
Probably.
China pay? And please be specific. What would that look like?
What I'd make China do is play by the international rules,
That's not very specific.
not like he has done. He has caused the deficit of China to go up, not down.
Listen, with the whole deficit thing in China, listen, we were engaged in a trade war with China, basically, and we were winning. And then the coronavirus hit, and now we're all fucked. So I'm not going to give Trump shit for the trade war going haywire because of a fucking pandemic that, while it could have been managed better, was unavoidable regardless.
With China, up, not down. We are making sure that in order to do business in China, you have to give all your intellectual property. You have to have a partner in China. It's 51%. We would not do that at all, number one. Number two, we're in a situation where China would have to play by the rules internationally as well. When I met with Xi, and when I was still vice president, he said, we're sending...
My thing is, are you going to, like, because here's the thing. Biden didn't do shit for 8 years. Right now, my understanding is that China is still registered as a developing country, which means that they get to avoid particular regulations that other countries don't have to avoid. The problem with that, though, is that the world's largest economy is us at 25% of the world economy, I believe. The second largest world economy is China at 15%, and they're gaining on us. And they're still considered a developing country. We're seeing right now under Trump, before the coronavirus, about 2.5% GDP growth. China's seeing 6 to 7% consistent. So, like, it's time for us to fucking regulate them. Like, it's time for us to be like, hey, you need to abide by standards, because we jerk each other off about fucking global warming constantly. But if, like, China had to get their fucking shit together, global warming would become so much less of a problem. Like, these other countries are destroying are like polluting so badly. And it's good that we're making steps towards like less pollution. But like, if China and India were on our level of pollution control, we wouldn't have a global warming problem.
Up air identification zones in the South China Sea. You can't fly through them. I said, we're going to fly through them. We just flew B-52, B-1 bombers through it. We're not going to pay attention. They have to play by the rules. And what's he do? He embraces guys like the thugs like in North Korea and the Chinese president and Putin and others, and he pokes his finger in the eye of all of our friends.
If I was going to give Trump the benefit of the doubt, he's simply just trying to be diplomatic. But I think that it's, those types of relations with China and North Korea have always failed.
All of our allies. We make up we're 25% of the world's economy. We need to be having the rest of our friends with us saying to China, these are the rules. You play by them or you're going to pay the price for not paying by them economically. That's the way I will run it, and that's what we did in upholding steel tariffs and a range of other things when we were president and vice president.
All right, and let's talk about North Korea.
Excuse me, no, I have to respond to that.
Okay, very quickly, and then
Son
we're going to move on
walked
to
out with
North
$1.5
Korea.
billion from China to
Not
manage after
true.
spending 10 minutes in office and being in Air Force Two.
What? I don't know
Number two,
where he
there's
gets
a very
these numbers
strong
from.
Email talking about your family wanting to make $10 million a year for introductions.
President Trump, on China policy, though, what
No, but wait a
specifically are
minute.
you going to do? What specifically are you going to do to make China pay? You've said you're going
First
to
of
make
all,
them pay.
China is paying. They're paying billions and billions of dollars. I just gave
New
$28 billion.
sanctions? New sanctions?
I just gave $28 billion to our farmers. Because
Taxpayers'
China,
money.
It's what?
Who cares? What are we talking about? What are you going to do to make China pay? And now we're talking about giving money to farmers, and then Joe Biden's, taxpayer money. And I find that weird because Biden's whole platform is like, hey, let's redistribute wealth. And then Trump does that to farmers, and then all of a sudden that's a bad thing. I'm just so confused. They're just taking shots at each other.
Taxpayers' money. Didn't
No,
come
no,
from
yeah,
China.
you know who the taxpayer is? It's called China. China paid
That was funny.
$28 billion.
But he's
And you know what
actually
they
right
did?
about that. We're trying to talk about China paying.
Pay it, Joe? They devalued their currency, and they also paid up. And you know who got the money? Our farmers, our great farmers, because they were targeted. You never charged them anything. Also, I charged them 25% on dumped steel because they were killing our steel industry. We were not going to have a steel industry.
Okay.
And now we have a steel
Okay,
industry.
Vice President Biden, your response, please.
Okay.
My response is, this isn't about. There's a reason why he's bringing up all this malarkey. There's a reason for it. He doesn't want to talk about the substantive issues. It's not about his family and my family. It's about your family. And your family's hurting badly. If you're making less than, if you're a middle-class family, you're getting hurt badly right now. You're sitting at the kitchen table this morning deciding, well, we can't get new tires for the ball because we have to wait another month or so.
Well, yeah, but that's always been a problem. See, here's the thing. During the coronavirus, that's an issue, but that's always been a problem. And as much as like we may not like Trump, and as much as I think that his tax cuts were dangerous, they actually were. They were positively impactful on the middle class.
Or are we going to be able to pay the mortgage? Or who's going to tell her she can't go back to community college? They're the decisions you're making. In the middle-class families like I grew up in Scranton and Claymont, they're in trouble. We should be talking about your families, but that's the last thing he wants to talk about.
I want to talk about North Korea. I do want to turn to 10 seconds, Mr. President. 10
That's a typical
seconds.
political statement. Let's get off this China thing, and then he looks, the family, around the table, everything. Just a typical politician when I see that.
Let's talk
I'm
about
not
North
a typical
Korea now.
politician.
Okay,
That's why I got
President.
elected.
Let's
Get off the subject of China. Let's talk around, sitting around the table.
All right.
Come on, Joe, you can do better.
We're going to talk about North Korea now. President Trump, you've met with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un 3 times. You've talked about your beautiful letters with him. You've touted the fact that there hasn't been a war or a long-range missile test, and yet North Korea recently rolled out its biggest ever intercontinental ballistic missile and continues to develop its nuclear arsenal. Do you see that as a betrayal of the relationship you forged? Just 30 seconds here because we need to get on to the next.
So when I met with Barack Obama, we sat in the White House right at the beginning, had a great conversation. It was supposed to be 15 minutes, and it was well over an hour. He said the biggest problem we have is North Korea.
Really quick, before we get into North Korea, people were saying, "Oh, Papa, how are we winning the trade war with China?" We were pressuring them into accepting our regulation, like accepting our conditions. Like we had them under, we had them under particular tariffs and pressures. And like there was a ton of information that like they wanted to accept it, but they wouldn't based on their pride. And they were slowly leaning towards accepting our conditions. What was expected was that they were going to try to hold out until Trump got out of office. But if Trump won again and we had continued the pressure, we would have won the trade war. But then we had the coronavirus, and now there's a threat. You know, either way, the war's dead because of what's going on. But they were simply trying to wait out Trump, but they were sweating it. It was hurting them a lot more than it was hurting us. So we were winning the trade war, guys. Anyway.
He indicated we will be in a war with North Korea.
I
Guess
don't
what?
think he
It
ever
would be a
did.
nuclear war, and he does have plenty of nuclear capability. In the meantime, I have a very good relationship with him. Different kind of a guy, but he probably thinks the same thing about me.
You know Kim Jong-un is 28 years old or something? 29? Is that fucking crazy?
We have a different kind of a relationship. We have a very good relationship, and there's no war. And about 2 months ago,
There was never going to be a war with North Korea. There was never going to be a war with North Korea. The biggest the people who would have kept them in check would have been China. The problem is that Trump, is he 36? I don't know if that's true. Last time I looked, hold on. The biggest problem was that Trump was engaged in a trade war with China, so China had no incentive to regulate North Korea. Let's see. Hold on a second. Let's see. Oh, is he 36? What the fuck? I was watching a documentary like last week where it said he was 28. It must have been an old-ass documentary. Shit.
he broke into a certain area. They said, oh, there's going to be trouble. I said, no, they're not, because he's not going to do that. And I was right. Look, instead of being in a war where millions of people, Seoul, is 25 miles away, millions and millions, 32 million people in Seoul, millions of people would be dead right now.
President
We
Trump,
don't have
that's
a war,
30
and I have a
seconds.
good
Thank you.
relationship.
Vice President Biden, to you, North Korea conducted 4 nuclear tests under the Obama administration. Why do you think you would be able to rein in this persistent threat?
Because I'd make it clear, which we were making clear to China, they had to be part of the deal. Because here's the I made it clear as a spokesperson of the administration when I went to China that they said, why are you moving your missile defense up so close? Why are you moving more forces here? Why are you continuing to do military maneuvers with South Korea? I said, because North Korea is a problem, and we're going to continue to do it so we can control them. We're going to make sure we can.
Can we just talk about really quick, like North Korea? Like North Korea really could never take over the world, and I'm going to explain to you why. Because North Korea, like historically, has been shit on to such an extent by like all foreign invaders. Like the reason that they have such an anti-American anti-American mentality, like they hate America, but it's like they fuck with us all the time, and they get away with it, and like they're like a little. It's so weird. It's hard to explain, but basically, like Korea has like a history of being colonized constantly by other countries like Japan and China. There's just no way that they would ever. That's how they developed like this bizarre mentality, like anti-American mentality. Because like they look at themselves as like the underdog that like stopped America from doing particular things. They're like, look at us, we did it. It's just so it's interesting. You guys should really look into the culture of North Korea. It's very interesting, their perceptions. It's fucking nuts.
Control them and make sure they cannot hurt us. And so if you want to do something about it, step up and help. If not, it's going to continue. What has he done? He's legitimized North Korea. He's talked about his good buddy who's a thug, and he talks about how we're better off. And they have much more capable missiles, able to reach U.S. territory much more easily than ever did before.
Let me follow up with you, Vice President Biden. You've said you wouldn't meet with Kim Jong-un without preconditions. Are there any conditions under which you would meet with him?
On the condition that he would agree that he would be drawing down his nuclear capacity to get the Korean Peninsula should be nuclear-free zone.
All right, let's move on to.
It is interesting, right? It's crazy.
They tried
Very
to meet
quickly,
with
10
him.
seconds,
They
President.
tried to meet with him. He wouldn't do it.
Well, yeah, because North Korea. Like, well, the reason that they wouldn't meet with him is because North Korea, they lie all the time about everything. They're like, "Oh, we'll do it." You know, like North Korea is like a very. It's a well-known, like, it's a criminal country. Like, they engage in like the export of like fake United States dollar, like money. They're really good at counterfeiting our money. Like, then they sell drugs and all this other shit and weaponry. Like, they engage in criminal activity as a way to pull in money. Like it's pretty fucked, man. If you really look into it, and like they have like part of their economic infrastructure is based around like enslaving their own people to force them to do work for them.
He didn't like Obama.
And they didn't give anything. Like, we didn't sit with Obama. Like, you know, Obama or Biden didn't sit with Kim Jong-un. Trump did, and he got nothing out of it other than like we looked stupid. Honestly, like they're building up their arsenal, so nothing Trump did worked. That's what we've established. Like, I get Trump tried, good for him, but it didn't work, and we're pretending like it did.
He didn't like him. He wouldn't do it.
Okay,
You know
gotta
for
give
a
a
fact they
chance to
tried.
respond to that
He
before we
wouldn't
move
do
on.
it.
You
And
know
that's
why?
okay. You know what? North Korea, we're not in a war. We have a good relationship. You know, people.
We weren't
going
gonna
to
be in a war.
President
Relationship
Trump, we
with
have to
leaders
move
of other
on because we
countries
have a
is a
lot of
good thing.
we have a lot of questions to get to.
What's so funny to me here, honestly, is that like a lot of conservatives back Trump up on the Kim Jong-un thing. Fine. They're like, "Oh, you know, it didn't work out, but you know, it's good that he tried." Yeah, like, you know, they basically talk about the idea of compromise, how you're not going to get perfect, but you have to compromise and to be allies. But then it comes to Iran, who was upholding their end of the nuclear deal, and all of a sudden, like, that is out the window. Like, compromise doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that we were getting favorable results and they weren't developing a nuclear arsenal. They still didn't like the deal. So because Obama did it. And it's like, stop. You can't be in support of like what Trump's doing with North Korea, and then on the other hand, be against what Obama's doing with Iran.
Not like saying we had a good relationship with Hitler before he, in fact, invaded Europe, the rest of Europe.
What?
The reason he would not meet with President Obama is because President Obama said, we're going to talk about denuclearization. We're not going to legitimize you, and we're going to continue to put stronger and stronger sanctions on you. That's why he wouldn't meet with us.
All right,
And it
let's
didn't
move
happen.
on. Let's
Excuse
move on
me.
and talk
He
about
left-
Yeah, they don't give a fuck about sanctions, dude.
It's gonna be a mess.
Because they have like their capital is like looks like a fucking, it looks real nice and everything, but then like the rest of the country is shit. Like, they're just going to continue to suck up as much money as possible.
President Trump. Okay, we do
They
need to move
left
on.
me a mess. North Korea was a mess.
We
And
need
in fact,
to
if
move
you
on so that
remember
we
the
can get
first
to all
2 or
of our
3
other
months,
questions tonight.
Read the news. Kim has shown vulnerability recently because of what Trump did. They're building up their nuclear arsenal, and they're building up their missiles and everything that they're not supposed to. So, like, what do you want me to read? You want me to read something where Kim Jong-un said that he thought Trump had a nice cock? Like, you know what I mean? Like, when it comes down to it, the big results, we got nothing. Nothing happened. So you want me to look into some kind of a minor factor? You know what I mean? Like, I understand what you're saying, but it didn't work. For the amount of effort and energy we put into North Korea, we got nothing. In fact, we got the reverse.
there was a very dangerous period in my first 3 months before we sort of worked things out a little bit.
Okay.
There was a very, they left us a mess. And Obama would be, I think, the first to say it was the single biggest problem he thought that our country.
Okay, let's move on to American families and the
I feel
economy.
like North Korea never would have been the single biggest threat to our economy or our country in any capacity. Like, they can't do anything. All we have to do is be friends with China, and then North Korea is under control.
One of the issues that's most important to them is
The biggest issue with North Korea is that they're like a criminal country that runs criminal operations out of it, and we have to constantly stop them. Like, we spent hundreds of millions of dollars just having to remake our $100 bills because they were faking $100 bills. They were so good at it that we had to keep changing our $100 bills, and it's a very expensive process.
is healthcare, as you both know. Today, there was a key vote on a new Supreme Court Justice, Amy Coney Barrett, and healthcare is at the center of her confirmation fight. Over 20 million Americans get their health insurance through the Affordable Care Act. It's headed to the Supreme Court, and your administration, Mr. President, is advocating for the court to overturn it. If the Supreme Court does overturn that law, those 20 million Americans could lose their health insurance almost overnight. So what would you do if those people have their health insurance taken away? You have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
First of all, I've already done something that nobody thought was possible.
Oh, God. Jesus, I hate it. Listen, Trump is failing on healthcare. Okay. When he first got into office, he tried to tackle healthcare immediately. I don't know why. It was a dumb idea. It's not an easy thing. And he failed at doing anything. He did overturn the single payer mandate. That's fine. But generally speaking, that just leads to increased premiums, because the reality is that the reason that we had a single payer mandate was to encourage people to all get on insurance so that it would reduce the overall cost. Now it would do so through private insurers, which is not exactly the best idea. So we kind of need a little bit of a revamp. In my opinion, we need a public insurance for people who are poor and private insurance for those who can afford it. But Trump literally just removed the single payer mandate. He has nothing to replace Obamacare with. Hell, I'm fine with Obamacare getting replaced. But Trump doesn't have a plan. All his plan is that he has a plan, but he won't tell us what his plan is, okay? As far as because we're gonna go into what is it? Pre-existing health condition protections. That's under Obamacare, but Trump doesn't have a way to maintain that outside of Obamacare. Okay, and I want you guys to understand something. As fucked up as Obamacare is, one of the reasons it's so expensive is the fact that there are protections for people with pre-existing conditions. Pre-existing conditions protections was one of the huge factors at making insurance more expensive, okay? One of them was that everybody would have it, or poor people would get it, of course. But like, the fact is that if you're going to allow people to get coverage who have pre-existing conditions, those people are going to have to pay the same as you. And since they're more expensive, your price goes up as well to offset their price. So healthcare is never going to be cheap ever again. With single payer health, with pre-existing conditions coverage. So you guys have to wrap your brains around it. Unless you're against single payer coverage, prices are going to be expensive. So that's the reality. So stop calling it socialized medicine and having a meltdown unless you're okay with people with pre-existing conditions not having coverage. Which is fine. I just disagree because it's very inhumane.
The legislature, I terminated the individual mandate. That is the worst part of Obamacare, as we call it. The individual mandate, where you have to pay a fortune for the privilege of not having to pay for bad health insurance. I terminated. It's gone. Now it's in court because Obamacare is no good. But then I made a decision. Run it as well as you can to my people, great people. Run it as well as you can. I could have gone the other route and made everybody very unhappy. They ran it. Premiums are down. Everything's down. Here's the problem. No matter how well you run it, it's no good. What we'd like to do is terminate it. We have the individual mandate done. I don't know that it's going to work. If we don't win, we will have to run it, and we'll have Obamacare, but it'll be better run. But it no longer is Obamacare, because without the individual mandate, it's much different. Pre-existing conditions...
It's not really much different.
Okay, what I would like to do is a much better healthcare, much better.
What is it?
Will always protect
Tell us
people
what
with
it
pre-existing.
is.
So I'd like to terminate Obamacare.
Tell us what it
beautiful healthcare. The Democrats will do it
is.
because there'll be tremendous pressure on them, and we might even have the House by that time. And I think we're going
Tell
to win
us
the House.
what
Okay,
it
we'll see, but I think we'll win the House.
is. It's been 4 years, and this dude still can't give us a healthcare plan that's anything other than I'll protect pre-existing conditions.
Come up with a better health care, always protecting people with pre-existing conditions. And one thing very important, we have 180 million people out there that have great private health care, far more than we're talking about with Obamacare. Joe Biden is going to terminate all of those policies. These are people that love their health care, people that have been successful, middle-income people, been successful. They have 180 million plans, 180 million people, families. Under what he wants to do, which will basically be socialized medicine, he won't even have a choice. They want to terminate 180 million plans.
No, they don't. Listen, like, you can give shit to Sanders and a lot of the very far leftists in our whatever in our system, but like, Biden is talking about spreading like a public plan on while maintaining private insurance. I think that's a great idea.
An incredible job with healthcare, and we're going to do even better.
Okay, Vice President Biden, yes, this is for you. Your healthcare plan calls for building on Obamacare. So my question is, what is your plan if the law is ruled unconstitutional by the Supreme Court? You have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
What I'm going to do is pass Obamacare with a public option.
There you
No
go.
Biden-care. The public option is an
Yeah,
option.
I'm fine with like whatever this Biden cares. Like right now, my thing is I basically am fine with opening up Medicare to everybody. Like, increase taxes, of course. Open up Medicare to everybody for a public option, and then, like, if you can afford insurance, like, pay based on your wage. So like, if you're poor, you get Medicare for free. If you are middle class, you would be paying taxes into like public option, but then also, maybe you'd pay a little bit more to get onto it. The public option is cheaper, it's more streamlined, it's not as good, but that's the point, right? But like, how good do you really need insurance? As long as you can go to the doctor, waiting a month and a half is not a big deal. I've done it before. It happens inside of America as well if you have a really good doctor. And it seems like Biden is gravitating towards that, but also maintaining the idea of a private option if you have the money. There's nothing wrong with that. That's the best way to do it. Have shit like public insurance, shittier insurance for people who can't afford it, and then have a private option for people who can. What's wrong with that? You just need a baseline standard of insurance. It doesn't have to be great. It just has to be decent.
That says that if you, in fact, do not have the wherewithal to be, if you qualify for Medicaid and you do not have the wherewithal in your state to get Medicaid, you automatically are enrolled, providing competition for insurance companies. That's what's going to happen. Secondly, we're going to make sure.
And that's true too, right? Because like if you, let's say you have a private option and a public option, okay? What's going to happen is this. That public option that has a better, like the ability to barter like wages and costs of particular things, that's going to create competition for the private insurers. The private insurers are going to go, oh shit, we've been screwing people for so long. And you all know private insurance is like they screw you. You all know it, unless you're not old enough to be on insurance. But even if you're like in favor of maintaining private insurance, you know how fucked up it is. But it's going to provide a public option, a solid public option is going to provide competition to that private option. It's going to cause the private option to have to be better or it will fade away. Right now, private insurers don't really have much competition. They're able to kind of just jack up prices and screw us over. So if we have the government provide an option that creates competition, it should help regulate the private option. Or the private option will disappear because it was inferior. But overall, it'll reduce costs and provide, healthcare to everybody. That's the whole point. Like, let's get healthcare for everybody, regardless of pre-existing conditions, as cheap as possible. And doing it on a public option is cheaper because it cuts out that middleman.
We reduce the premiums and reduce drug prices by making sure that there's competition that doesn't exist now by allowing the Medicare to negotiate drug prices with the insurance companies. Thirdly, the idea that I want to eliminate private insurance. The reason why I had such a fight with 20 candidates for the nomination was I support private insurance. That's why not one single person with private insurance would lose their insurance under my plan, nor did they under Obamacare. They did not lose their insurance unless they chose they wanted to go to something else. Lastly, we're going to make sure we're in a situation that we actually protect pre-existing. There's no way he can protect pre-existing conditions. None, zero. You can't do it in the ether. He's been talking about this for a long time. He's never come up with a plan. I guess we're going to get the pre-existing condition plan the same time we get the infrastructure plan that we've been waiting since 17, 18, 19, and 20. The fact, I still have a few more minutes. I know you're getting anxious. The fact is that he's already cost the American people because of his terrible handling of the COVID virus and the economic spillover. 10 million people have lost their private insurance. And he wants to take away 22 million more people who have it under Obamacare and over 110 million people.
Somebody said lots lost their insurance. More people are insured now under Obamacare. I don't know what you're talking about.
Pre-existing conditions, and all the people from COVID are going to have pre-existing conditions. What are they going to do?
I have a follow-up for you, Vice President Biden. It relates to something that President Trump said. He's accusing you of wanting socialized medicine. What do you say to people who have concerns that your health care plan, which includes a government insurance option, takes the country one step closer to a healthcare system run entirely by the government?
So I addressed that. If the private insurers can't compete with the public option, then that means that the private insurance options are shit. What would honestly happen though is this. Let's say we had a really solid public option, right? Private insurance companies would move away from their own independent insurance and they would move towards supplemental insurance. So like basically what you'll see in the future is once we do pass a public option, you're going to probably do is you're going to see everybody on the public option and then you're going to see private insurers offering like supplementary insurance for like an extra $20 a month. You get like extra benefits. That's probably what they're going to do. They're never going to completely fade away. They'll figure out a way to fit into the market. But like at the end of the day, we should be figuring out the least costs for the most bang for your buck, the most people covered for the least amount of costs, and that's going to be a public option. Now, of course, that can be like that can get a little crazy, but still.
I say it's ridiculous. It's like saying that we're the idea that the fact that there's a public option that people can choose that makes it a socialist plan. Look, the difference between the president, I think, healthcare is not a privilege; it's a right. Everyone should have the right to have affordable.
I work in hospital insurance and assisting with bill payments and such, and the amount of people that lost insurance from employers and private companies charging more than they could afford was massive. I spent the vast majority of time trying to find insurance for people due to Obamacare. Perhaps that is just my state, but it's personal space. No, I understand. Here's the problem with Obamacare is that it tried to spread insurance to everybody through subsidizations of private companies. Okay, it tried to expand healthcare, which it did. It made it a lot more expensive, but it tried to expand it by subsidizing private insurers rather than saying, fuck the private insurers for poor people, give them a public option. If we put them on the public option, it would be much less expensive than Obamacare, because Obamacare is Medicare for all. But if we had to pay the middleman a bunch of money, that's what Obamacare is. So some kind of Medicare for all, like an expansion of like a public option, will lower the prices overall. And my understanding is that Medicare for all is actually $200 billion a year cheaper than our current option. So I'm just saying. Now, that's a very generous perspective on it. I think the Koch brothers did do a study, but that's a very like optimistic projection. But still, it's a better idea. And you have to understand that, like, you guys have to understand, covering pre-existing conditions was going to raise the prices. It's not necessarily fully Obamacare spreading the insurance that raised prices. It's also pre-existing conditions coverage. And since everybody's on board with that, you're going to have to take an L to an extent.
And I am very proud of my plan. It's gotten endorsed by all the major labor unions as well as a whole range of other people who, in fact, are concerned in the medical field. This is something that's going to save people's lives, and this is going to give some people an opportunity to have health care for their children. How many of you home are worried and rolling around in bed tonight wondering what in God's name you're going to do if you get sick? Because you've lost your home insurance, your health insurance, your company's gone under. We have to provide health insurance for people at an affordable rate, and that's what I do.
President
Excuse
Trump,
me, he was
your
there
response.
for 47 years. He didn't do it. He was now there as vice president for 8 years, and it's not like it was 25 years ago. It was 3 3/4. It was just a little while ago, right? Less than 4 years ago. He didn't do anything. He didn't do it. He wants socialized medicine, and it's not that he wants it. His vice president, I mean, she is more liberal than Bernie Sanders and wants it even more. Bernie Sanders wants it. The Democrats want it. You're going to have...
I don't think that Kamala Harris or Camila, whatever the fuck, I don't think she's more progressive than Bernie Sanders, just like the most leftist out there. Are you saying free healthcare no, it's public healthcare. It's not free. You have to pay taxes on it. I'm saying that there should be a public option because it cuts out the bullshit middleman. I'm saying we should have a public option that's okay insurance, but it's not great for people who can't afford it. And then you should be able to get private insurance if you can.
have socialized medicine, just like he went with fracking. We're not going to have fracking. We're going to stop fracking. We're going to stop fracking. Then he goes to Pennsylvania after he gets a nomination, where he got very lucky to get it. And he goes to Pennsylvania, and he says, oh, we're going to have fracking. And you never ask that question. And by the way, so far, I respect very much the way you're handling this, I have to say.
By the way,
but somebody should ask the question.
We pay with the public option through taxes. We're already paying it. You guys have to understand, we're already paying a crazy amount of money for Obamacare. So taking, like I just explained, what we do right now is we subsidize private insurance companies for poor people to get coverage. Instead of doing that, it would be cheaper to simply have one streamlined public option that's less expensive for everybody. It would overall lower down costs, and it would allow more people to have access to to healthcare at a lower cost to the American taxpayer.
He goes for a year. There will be
we have a number of topics.
No, but that's a big question.
We're going to get to.
It's the same thing with socialized medicine.
Vice President, your response, please.
My response is people deserve to have affordable health care, period. Period. And the Biden care proposal will, in fact, provide for that affordable health care, lower premiums. What we're going to do is going to cost some money. It's going to cost over $750 billion over 10 years to do it. And they're going to have lower premiums. You can buy into the better plans.
So he basically just said $75 billion a year. Honestly, if you guys are okay with a $100 billion increase to the fucking military, you should be okay with a $75 billion increase to fucking healthcare. Because we gave all this money to the military for like tanks and shit that they didn't fucking need. They didn't even want it. They didn't even want this shit, and we gave it to them. And now we have to maintain them. That costs them billions of dollars a year as well.
The cheaper plans, lower your premiums.
Sell off some fucking tanks.
Deal with unexpected billing and have your drug prices drop significantly. He keeps talking about it. He hasn't done a thing for anybody on health care. Not a thing.
When
Very
he
quickly,
says,
then I want to talk
when
about
he
what's
says
happening on
public
Capitol
option,
Hill.
he's talking about socialized medicine. And when he
sure.
healthcare. When he talks about a public option, he's talking about destroying your Medicare, totally destroying, and destroying your Social Security. And this whole country will come down. You know, Bernie
He's just lying at this point. He's talking about expanding Medicare.
Sanders tried it in his state. He tried it in his state. His governor was a very liberal governor. They want to make it work.
Okay,
It
let's let
was
Vice President
impossible
Biden
to work.
respond.
It doesn't
Vice
work.
President
He's a
Biden
very
responds.
confused guy. He thinks he's running against somebody else.
Yeah, sell the tanks to North Korea.
He's running against Joe Biden. I beat all those other people because I disagreed with them. Joe Biden he's running against. And the idea that we're in a situation that they're going to destroy Medicare, this is the guy that the actuary at Medicare said, if in fact, at Social Security, if...
By the way, Trump's trying to absolutely gut Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security. So, not exactly a champion of the people.
In fact, he continues to withhold his plan to withhold the tax on Social Security. Social Security will be bankrupt by 2023 with no way to make up for it. This is the guy who's tried to cut Medicare. So, the idea that Donald Trump is lecturing me on Social Security and Medicare? Come on.
He tried to get
10
rid of. He
seconds,
tried
Mr.
to hurt
President, then I
Social
have to go to
Security
another
years
question.
ago. Years ago. Go back and look at the records.
Bro, you literally just tried to cut like $500 billion from like Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security like last year, Trump. Like, shut up.
He tried to hurt Social Security years ago.
All right, let's move on. I'm going to move on.
Mr.
President, I have to move on to the next question.
They said
or
the
else
stock
we're not
market
going to
will
have time to
boom
talk about it.
if I'm elected. If he's elected, the stock market will crash.
Okay, let's
Because
move on to the
analysts are
next
saying
question
that.
very quickly.
Look, the idea that the stock market is booming is his only measure of what's happening. Where I come from in Scranton and Claymont, the people don't live.
That's fair. Honestly, we have too much of like we gauge the success of America based on purely GDP when we should be gauging it on like the human experience. Like the reality is that in America, our comfort levels have gone down. The last 3 years we've seen a reduction in life expectancy rates, an increase in like suicidal tendencies and suicide. Overall, our quality of life is not even close to #1 out of all the Western countries. It's insane.
Off of the stock market.
It's time for us to have a more human-centric capitalism.
Just in the last three years during this crisis, the billionaires in this country made, according to the Wall Street, $700 billion more. $700 billion more, because that's his only measure. What happens to the ordinary people out there? What happens to them?
Let's talk about what's happening on Capitol Hill. We're going to move on.
401ks are through the roof.
We're going to
People's
move on.
stock are through the roof.
All
And
right.
he doesn't come from Scranton.
It's nice that people's stocks are through the roof in 401ks, but like, that doesn't really help people immediately. It's nice, but like, it's not long-term sustainable. So like 401ks being better now is irrelevant because we have like, what we had to do to get to that point was have increased the annual federal deficit by $200 billion a year.
That's like he lived there for a short
It's
period of time
redundant.
before he
Okay,
even
so
knew
we're
it.
going to move on to
And he
the next
left.
question.
The people of Pennsylvania
Let me
will
move
show
on
you
to my
that.
next question,
They
gentlemen.
understand.
As of tonight, more than 12 million people are out of work, and as of tonight, 8 million more Americans have fallen into poverty, and more families are going hungry every day. Those hit hardest are women and people of color. They see Washington fighting over a
The most inferior aspects. I'm just kidding.
relief bill. Mr. President, why haven't you been able to get them the help they need? 30 seconds here.
Because Nancy Pelosi doesn't want to approve it. I do.
But you're the president.
I do, but I still have to get. Unfortunately, that's one of the reasons I think we're going to take over the House because of her. Nancy Pelosi doesn't want to approve anything because she'd love to have some victories on a date called November 3rd. Nancy Pelosi does not want to approve it. We are ready, willing, and able to do something. Don't forget, we've already approved 3 plans, and it's gone through, including the Democrats, in all fairness. This one she doesn't want. It's near the election because she thinks it helps her politically. I think it hurts her politically.
All right, Mr. Vice President,
The Republican leader in the United States Senate said he can't pass it. He will not be able to pass it. He does not have Republican votes. Why isn't he talking to his Republican friends?
let me follow up with you, Vice President.
We made a
Biden,
deal, the
because let me
Republicans
ask
passed
Vice
it.
President Biden a question. You are the leader of the Democratic Party. Why have you not pushed the Democrats to get a deal for the American people?
Well, I have, and they have pushed it. Look, they passed this act all the way back in the beginning of the summer. This is like it's not new. It's been out there. This HEROES Act has been sitting there. And look at what's happening. When I was in charge of the Recovery Act with $800 billion, I was able to get $145 billion to local communities that have to balance their budgets and states that have to balance their budgets, so then have to fire firefighters, teachers, first responders, law enforcement officers, so they can keep their cities and counties running. He will not support that. They have not done a thing for them. And Mitch McConnell said, let them go bankrupt. Let them go bankrupt. Come on. What's the matter
The bill
with
that
these
was
guys?
passed in the House was a bailout of badly run, high-crime, Democrat, all run by Democrats, cities and states. It was a way of getting a lot of money, billions and billions of dollars to these states. It was also a way of getting a lot of
I don't understand, like, why, like, basically Trump is saying that we shouldn't pass a relief bill, which is a coronavirus relief bill, because it would benefit Democratic states. Like, what?
money from our people's pockets to people that come into our country illegally. We were going to take care of everything for them. And what that does, and I'd love to do that, I'd love to help them, but what that does, everybody all over the world will start pouring into our country. We can't do it. This was a way of taking care of them. This was a way of spending on things that had nothing to do with COVID, as per your question. But it was really a big bailout for badly run Democrat cities and states.
All right,
By the way,
I want
if I
to.
get elected, I'm running as a proud Democrat, but I'm going to be an American president. I don't see red states and blue states. What I see is American, United States. And folks, every single state out there finds themselves in trouble. They're going to start laying off, whether they're red or blue, cops.
Well, I understand that he was talking about where the riots were, but still, like, we need to bail people out based on the coronavirus. You can't just wrap the riots into the coronavirus and politicize it.
Firefighters, first responders, because teachers, because they have to balance their budget. And the founders were smart. They allowed the federal government to deficit spend to compensate for the United States of America.
I want to talk about the minimum wage, gentlemen. Mr. Vice President, we are talking a lot about struggling small businesses
Yes.
and business owners these days. Do you think this is the right time to ask them to raise the minimum wage? You, of course, support a $15 federal minimum
I
wage.
do. Because
No, I don't support a $15 an hour minimum wage. Listen, $15 hour minimum wages are fucking bullshit. And I'm going to explain to you why. First and foremost, they're really bad for small businesses. Okay, they're really bad for small businesses. Okay, what happened? Let's say we increase the minimum wage to $15 an hour. Now, of course, it's going to take them like years to do it because they're like, yeah, $15 an hour minimum wage by 2030, and it's like, okay, well, how does that help anything now? It does nothing. But right now, see, it would have been nice if we kept up our minimum wages, but like we didn't, right? So the thing is that now we're in a technological revolution where Big businesses can afford technology, whereas small businesses can't. So you're going to see, let's say we increase the minimum wage to $15 an hour, even over a period of time. It's going to increase labor costs. So smaller businesses are going to have a problem growing. Couple that with the fact that Obamacare makes it so they have to provide insurance when they hit a certain threshold, it's going to be incredibly difficult for small businesses to move forward. Big businesses, however, can say, oh, you want to increase our labor costs? Well, what we can do is we can invest into technologies that are more expensive for us now, but long-term cost us less money. So we can displace jobs. So all a $15 hour minimum wage is going to do is hurt small businesses and make it so they can't grow, while also enabling big businesses to lay people off by just deciding to replace them with technology. You're already seeing self-checkouts in Walmart where one person mans like 8 registers. Self-checkouts. It's happening. And so instead of these ideas like a minimum wage, which encourage only people who work to get more money, we should focus on a universal basic income, which gives everybody more money, right? $1,000 a month. It's not really enough to live on, but it's enough to massively spur the economy. You want to get more people working, give everybody $1,000 a month. Honestly, you know why? There are so many people in the United States having to work 2 jobs right now. Boom, they get to quit one of their jobs. Somebody else can work their other job. It encourages lower work times, right? People working less hours, more time being at home, more money going through the economy. More businesses opening because there's more people to spend more money. You want to talk about robust economic infrastructure. Talk about $1,000 a month for everybody to just dump money. People fixing their cars, going out to dinner more often, being less stressed. They're really spending less money on self-medicating and drugs and actually more money on going to doctors and hospitals. Like, honestly, it would be massive. And then you go, oh shit. Imagine you open up a little mom and pop store, right? You want to open up a business right now. You want to open up a small business, right? You open up that small business. You get to pay your workers minimum wage. They get a wage on top of that, which is going to incentivize good workers working for you while having good benefits. More people in your community will have more money to invest into your business. Even if Walmart can outdo you and charge 10% less than you, people will be more incentivized to say, well, I have a lot more money now, so I'm going to go support my local mom and pop. Universal basic income gives people massive power, financial power. It's huge. It's huge. It's a massive beneficiary, and it's massively beneficial, and it's so much better than a minimum wage increase. Honestly. So yeah, fuck a minimum wage increase. Fuck drastic minimum wage increases. You want to increase minimum wage by like 2.5% every year to adjust for inflation? That's probably smart.
Because I think one of the things we're going to have to do is we're going to have to bail them out too. We should be bailing them out now.
What the hell are you
Small
talking about, dog?
businesses. You got 1 in 6 of them going under. They're not going to be able to make it back.
This motherfucker's talking about minimum wage increases while also talking about bailing out small businesses. How the fuck is a minimum wage increase going to help?
Passed a package that allows us to be able to call PPP. Money is supposed to go to help them do everything from organize how they can deal with their businesses being open safely. Schools, how they can make classrooms smaller. How they
What the hell are you talking about? We're talking about fucking minimum wage increase, dog, and now you're going off on a fucking tangent.
can hire more teachers, how they can put ventilation systems in. They need the help. The businesses as well as the schools need the help. But these guys will not help them. It's not giving them any of the money.
We are going to move on to
One
immigration,
thing very
but I
quickly,
want
he
to
said
get
we
your
have to help our
reaction.
small businesses by raising the minimum wage. That's not helping. I think it should be a state option. Alabama is different than New York. New York is
This
different
is
from
true.
Vermont. Every state is different. It should be a state
true.
option.
You said very
We have to
recently-
help.
Like, yeah, no, states should be able to decide their own minimum wages. Like, I mean, like, federal minimum wage should probably go up, like, a little bit, slightly. Like, it's at $7.25, I think, right now. It's nothing. Like, it could probably go up based on inflation to some extent. But again, universal basic income, better than minimum wage. It took me a second.
It's very important. We have to help our small businesses.
You
How
said-
are you helping your small businesses when you're forcing wages? What's going to happen, and what's been proven to happen, is when you do that, these small businesses fire many of their employees.
You said very
Not true,
recently you would
by the way.
consider raising the federal minimum wage to $15
Say
an
it.
hour. You said recently you would consider raising the federal minimum wage to
What I
$15 an hour. Is
really
that still the
like,
case?
and I would consider it to an extent, but
In a
what I
second
really like,
administration?
in a second administration, but not to a level that's going to put all these businesses out of business. It should be a state option. Look, I lived in different places. I know different places. They're all different. Some places, $15 is not so bad. In other places, other states, $15 would
Okay,
be
President Trump,
ruinous.
thank you. Quick response, Vice President Biden.
2 jobs, 1 job, be below poverty. People are making $6, $7, $8 an hour. These first responders, we all clap for as they come down the street because they've allowed us to make it. What's happening? They deserve a minimum wage of $15. Anything below that puts you below the poverty level. And there is no evidence that when you raise the minimum wage,
I think the poverty level is $12,000 a year. So by that logic, like, what is that? $6 an hour is the poverty line? I don't know.
businesses go out of business. That is simply not true.
We're going to talk about
Also-
immigration. We're going to talk about immigration.
It's just so crazy because as we move forward, we talk about minimum wage increase, all this other bullshit, but like we have to figure out ways to pay people even if they can't work in a traditional job. Like, because jobs are disappearing overall. Like, we're hiring robots and technologies to replace people. Like, so many malls are closing because of Amazon. Amazon is a technology. Like, yeah, they employ people. But like where normally you need a factory and then trucks to get those goods to those particular brick and mortar stores and then people to sell it, you're cutting out the brick and mortar stores and you're going from factory straight to people's homes rather than from factory to the brick and mortar. And so like technologies are displacing jobs. Even look at something like Uber, which is like displacing like the taxi jobs. Like wages are being driven down and jobs are disappearing. So like a universal basic income is basically a bunch of small business loans. Like, instead of having to, so they can work for jobs, it encourages people to do what they want. Like, sell a fucking cake. Who cares what you're doing as long as you're happy and it's contributing to the economy?
Now, gentlemen, and we're going to talk about families within this context. Mr. President, your administration separated children from their parents at the border, at least 4,000 kids. You've since reversed your zero-tolerance policy, but the United States can't locate the parents of more than
big
500
one.
children. So how will these families ever be reunited?
They won't.
Children are
They
brought
will
here
never be.
by coyotes and lots of bad people.
So last night, a lot of people were like, Papa, blah, 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 cages. Let me explain to you the whole cages, kids in cages things and how, let me explain to you. So really quick with Uber. Yeah, no, what's happening is that like people are getting paid less money through technology to provide the same service as a taxi driver. So it's driving wages down. Anyway, back to what I was saying. At the border situation. So under Barack Obama, I don't know if he started it, but it was definitely under his administration. Basically what happened is if you came across the border and you were suspicious, they would separate you and your family or your family, and they would do further investigations. Yes, you would be put in a cage, but that's basically just like a makeshift holding cell. It's not great. It's not perfect. It's not comfortable, but it's the reality. When Trump came into office and he said this, I don't know why he walks it off because he knows it was a bad idea. He was trying to stop asylum seekers from coming here in such large masses. So what he decided to do was say, you know what? If you come here, I'm going to separate your family. So it would dissuade people from wanting to come here. And that's the zero tolerance policy. Rather than pulling families apart who seemed incredibly suspicious, he started separating every single family that came across the border. It lasted a very short amount of time because it was overturned very quickly. But that's what we're talking about. Trump's zero tolerance policy that was really fucked up. And it was really just hurting people who really needed it the most. Asylum seekers aren't bad people. Maybe they aren't seeking asylum for what they should be, but they're here to escape like some kind of like the hardships of their country. And we always have this conversation about how to keep them out of our country by increasing some kind of regulation in our country rather than having the real conversation of how do we make their country better. We give countries money. We give them money all the time. Why don't we give them money with the condition that they have to stop treating their people like shit? We're so concerned with going into Iraq or Iran or whatever fucking Middle Eastern country that we can to get oil. But when it comes to impoverished countries that are gang-ridden and we have no benefit, we don't give a singular fuck about helping it or solving the problem. So maybe we need to change our perspectives on the world and say, you know what? If we have all these people coming to our country because they're being treated like shit, why don't we go and do something about it?
Hotels, and they're brought here, and they used to use them to get into our country. We now have as strong a border as we've ever had. We're over 400 miles of brand new wall. You see the numbers, and we let people in, but they have to come in legally, and they come in through.
But how
America.
we
Let
reunite
me
these
just tell
kids
you,
with their
let me
families,
just tell you,
Mr.
They
President?
built cages. They used to say, I built the cages, and then they had a picture in a certain newspaper, and it was a picture of these horrible cages, and they said, look at these cages. President Trump built them, and then it was determined they were built in 2014. That was him.
Do you
They
have a
built
plan
Well, yeah, built by Obama, but then you continued them. Like, we already went through everything.
to reunite the kids?
Yes,
with
we're
their
working on
families?
it we're trying very hard. But a lot of these kids come out without the parents. They come over through cartels and through coyotes.
No, but they're talking specifically about the kids that came here with their parents that you separated and now you can't find their parents. Now, the parents are probably trying to stay hidden because that means that the kids get to stay in our foster care system and then at least they'll have a better opportunity growing up in foster care in America than growing up in their country.
coyotes and through gangs.
Vice President Biden, let me bring you into this
525
conversation. Quick response and then another question to you.
These 500 plus kids came with parents. They separated them at the border to make it a disincentive to come to begin with.
Yeah, that's true.
Big, real tough. We're really strong. And guess what? They cannot, it's not coyotes didn't bring them over. Their parents were with them.
Sure.
They got separated from their parents. And it makes us a laughing stock and violates every notion of who we are as a nation.
Let me ask you a
That's
question.
fair.
They did it. We changed the policy.
Your response.
That's not true at all in any capacity. That's not even true. Like Obama didn't do. He did it. Trump did it with a zero tolerance policy, and he got yelled at for it. He's just lying here.
They
to
did
that?
it. We
We
changed.
did not
They built the
separate
cages.
they-
Who built the cages, Joe?
Let's talk about what
Who
we're
built the
talking about.
cages,
Let's
Joe?
talk about what we're talking about. What happened? Parents were ripped, their kids were ripped from their arms and separated. And now they cannot find over 500 sets of those parents. And those kids
The
are
problem is that Biden, it's he can't defend himself properly because the thing is like the dishonesty here. Like here's what should happen, right? Biden should say, listen, we did have a separation policy for people who came over who were suspicious, but Trump implemented a zero tolerance policy so that everybody that came over was separated to decentivize them from coming over. The problem is that if Biden says that, like, yeah, we had a separation policy that was in extreme measures, he would look bad. So he's pandering to people by not explaining the full context of the situation, which is leading to more favorability for Trump because politicians like Biden feel like they need to lie to the American people to gain their positive favor. And that's a big problem with our politics, is that politicians lie instead of just say, like, here's a hard truth.
alone. Nowhere to go. Nowhere to go. It's criminal. It's criminal.
Let me ask
Kristen,
you
I will
about
say this.
immigration.
They went
10
down. We
seconds, and
brought
then I need to ask
reporters,
you.
everything. They are so well taken care of. They're in facilities that were so clean.
But some
and
of them
have
haven't
gotten
been
such good-
reunited
But
with
just
their
ask
families.
one
Well,
question.
there were some fucking issues with some of these places that were holding, asylum seekers and whatnot.
Who built the cages? I'd love you to ask him that. Who built the cages?
Let me ask about your immigration policy, Mr. Vice President.
Oh, probably some manufacturing company.
The Obama administration did fail to deliver immigration reform, which had been a key promise during the administration. It also presided over record deportations as well as family detentions at the border before changing course. So why should voters trust you with an immigration overhaul now?
Because we made a mistake. It took too long to get it right. It took too long to get it right. I'll be president of the United States, not vice president of the United States. And the fact
Poggers.
is, I've made it very clear. Within 100
Oh,
days, I'm going to
shit.
present the United States Congress a pathway to citizenship for over 11 million undocumented people. And all of those so-called dreamers, those DACA kids, they're going to be immediately certified again to be able to stay in this country and put on a path to citizenship. The idea that they are
So-
being sent home by this guy and they want to do that is
Here's my thing with DACA. Like, some people don't agree with it. I don't know if I do or don't agree with it. My thing is this, right? Obama, as president, did the whole DACA program, right? Even if you disagree with it, I think that there's something to be said that in order to have a strong word, you need to abide by the word. Sometimes it is better off to commit to a bad decision from a leader than to change that decision. Okay? Even if you disagree with DACA, our president, doesn't matter who the president was, our president agreed to do it, and you honor that program and you move forward. That's what having a strong word is about. Okay? So yeah.
They've gone to a country they've never seen before. I can imagine you're 5 years old, your parents are taking you across the Rio Grande River, and it's illegal. And you say, oh, no, Mom, leave me here. I'm not going to go with you. They've been here. Many of them are model citizens. Over 20,000 of them are first responders out there taking care of people during this crisis. We owe them. We owe them.
President,
Kristen, he
your
had
reaction.
8 years to do what he said he was going to do. And I've changed. Without having a specific, we got rid of catch and release. We got rid of a lot of
Who's more
horrible things that they put in.
who's
And
more
they-
bipartisan? Joe Biden for sure. Joe Biden's actually like known rather well for being like pretty bipartisan. Like, he did a pretty decent job when he was in office of pulling people together.
lived with. But he had 8 years he was vice president. He did nothing except build cages to keep children in.
Vice President Biden, your response.
The catch and release, you know what he's talking about there? If in fact you had family came across and they were
Right,
arrested.
you know, the catch and release program gets me. The whole claim from Trump, the catch and release, like, Trump is trying to make you think that catch and release is like we find criminals and then we release them into the country to kill people. Catch and release is specifically like asylum seekers, right? So you catch them and then you give them a court date and then you release them into the country because it's like, I guess, cheaper than having a facility. I don't really know why we do it like that. And then they come back for a court date years later. Now, the problem is that like only estimates are only 60 to 75% of them actually show up for their court date, which is a big problem. but like he's still representing what catch and release is in the wrong way.
They, in fact, were given a date to show up for their hearing. They were released. And guess what? They showed up.
Not usually. Well, usually, yeah, sure. More times than not. At best, projections are 2/3 of the time they would show up.
Hearing. And this is the first president in the history of the United States of America that anybody seeking asylum has to do it in another country. That's never happened before in America. That's never happened before in America. You come to the United States and you make your case that I seek asylum based on the...
I mean, I don't know that it's the worst. Like, listen, if you're coming from, I don't know, like, I don't think it's the worst idea. Like, you know, I mean, you're allowed to seek asylum wherever you want. But, you know, telling the countries that they have to seek asylum in Mexico, I don't know if that's so bad. Better than their other country, I would assume, right?
on the following premise, why I deserve it under American law. They're sitting in squalor on the other side of the river.
President Trump, your response,
So
30
important.
seconds, and then we'll move
It just shows that he has no understanding of immigration or the laws. Catch and release is a disaster.
What?
A murderer would come in, a
No.
rapist would come in, a very
No.
bad person would come in. We would take their name. We have to
No.
release them into our country. And then you say they come back. Less than 1% of the people come back. We have to send ICE out and Border Patrol out
What?
to find them. We would say, come back in 2 years,
What are you
3
talking
years.
about?
We're going to give you a court case. You need Perry Mason. We're going to give you a court case. When you say they come back, they don't come back, Joe. They never come
No, like 60 to 75% of them do come back. He's just
back.
lying.
Only the
He's a
really,
liar.
I hate to say this, but those with the lowest IQ, they might come back.
Okay, President
Ah, he's such an asshole. He's saying that only stupid people follow the law. Only stupid asylum seekers follow the law. How is that a good look? Come on.
Let's give Vice President Biden a chance to respond, and then we're going to move on to the
You
next
don't know the
section.
law, Joe.
Vice President Biden, your response.
Know the law, what he's telling you is simply not true.
Well, check it out. They don't come back.
Check it out.
All right, let's move
But
on
we don't have
to
to
the
worry
next
about it because they
section.
terminated it, so we don't have to worry about
Let's
it
move
anymore.
on to the next
And you have
section.
525 kids not knowing where in God's name they're going to be and lost their parents.
Go ahead.
All right, let's talk about our next section, which is race in America. And I want to talk about the way black and brown Americans experience
Race in
this
America.
country.
I love
That experience is
NASCAR.
something
Yeah.
else. It happens regardless of class and income. Parents who feel they have no choice but to prepare
I like to call it The View.
their children for the chance that they could be targeted, including by the police, for no reason other than the color of their skin. Mr. Vice President, in the next 2 minutes, I want you to speak directly to these families. Do you understand why these parents fear for their children?
I do. You know, my daughter is a social worker, and she's written a lot about this. She has a graduate degree from the University of Pennsylvania in social work. And you know, one of the reasons why I ended up working on the east side of Wilmington, Delaware, which is 90% African American, was to learn more about what was going on. I never had to tell my daughter, if she's pulled over, make sure she puts for a traffic stop, put both hands on top of the wheel.
You know what's funny? I learned that when I was younger. My mom taught me that. She's like, yeah, if you get pulled over, pull the keys out, put them on the dashboard, put your hands on the thing. I've never been pulled over, though, because I'm white, so. They're talking about the core that, like, black people have to be, like, more, you know, vigilant of the law because there is an implicit bias. And if you're, you know, a person of color, a BIPOC, there's a higher chance of you getting pulled over because of it.
Don't reach for the glove box because someone may shoot you. But a black parent, no matter how wealthy or how poor they are, has to teach their child when you're walking down the street, don't have a hoodie on when you go across the street, making sure that you, in fact,
It's true.
if you get pulled over, yes, sir, no, sir, hands on top of the wheel, because you are, in fact, the victim, whether you're a person making child of a $300,000 a year person or someone who's on food stamps. The fact of the matter is, there is institutional racism in America.
Sure.
And we have always said, we've never lived up to it. That we hold these truths to be self-evident. All men and women are created equal. Well, guess what? We have never, ever lived up to it. But we've always constantly been moving the needle further and further to inclusion, not exclusion. This is the first president to come along and says, that's the end of that. We're not going to do that anymore. We have to provide for economic opportunity, better education, better health care, better access to schooling, better access to opportunity to borrow money to start businesses. All the things we can do, and I've laid out a clear plan as to how to do those things, just to give people a shot. It's about accumulating the ability to have wealth as well as it is to be free from violence.
President Trump, same question to you, and let me remind you of the question. I would like you to speak directly to these families. Do you understand why these parents fear for their children?
Yes, I do. And again, he's been in government 47 years. He never did a thing except in 1994 when he did such harm to the black community.
It's true.
And they were called, and he called them super predators. And he said that. He said it, super predators.
I don't know that he actually called them super predators, though. I can't really substantiate
Never lived
that.
that down. 1994, the crime bill, the super predators. Nobody has done
Basically, I remember watching the speech, and Biden was like, listen, I understand that there is like basically systemic racism that has a negative impact on all these people, but it gets to a point where they become criminals and we need to get them off the streets. That's what he said.
more for the black community than Donald Trump. And if you look, with the exception of Abraham Lincoln, possible exception, but the exception of Abraham Lincoln, nobody has done what I've done.
I love how listen, you can never do more than freeing the slaves. The exaggeratory language is
criminal
crazy.
justice reform. Obama and Joe didn't do it.
But Trump has a decent leg to stand on. So if we separate this into two aspects, we could separate this into basically government and social, you could say. So, or, social and policy. So socially, Trump is literal cancer for black people. Like, the words that he uses are racially charged, even if it's unintentional. He doesn't walk around these issues very well. He doesn't contextualize Black Lives Matter very well. He plays to his base a little too much. Things like Make America Great Again, he fails to explain that that's simply the Make America Great Again aspect is to bring, the middle class back up to strength rather than to a time where black people are subjugated and, whatever. So socially, Trump is cancer for black people. Policy-wise, he's actually not that bad. Like, I always talk about, I don't agree with his tax cuts or the way he stimulated the economy because it's not long-term, but he did have a rather very positive impact on the black community in the sense of lower unemployment and overall higher wages and more money. It is something. It's better than nothing. Getting people out of jail, especially for like nonviolent drug crimes. This was before the coronavirus and people getting out of jail just because it's coronavirus. As well as like more business opportunity. He's working with Ice Cube, working with Ice Cube on the Platinum Plan. Like, neither party gives a fuck about black people, but Trump is doing his best. Is it enough? I'm a UBI guy. I think that would be where we need to go. But like, it's certainly more than I imagined. That what Biden would produce. Maybe I'm wrong, but like, you got to give Trump some credit. Even if you disagree with it, you got to give Trump some credit.
I don't even think they tried because they had no chance of doing it.
Do I look racist for saying Ice T instead of Ice Cube? Too many Iceds.
They might have wanted to do it, but if you had to see the arms I had at
Hey, listen, Ice T is a criminal investigator. I got confused, all right, guys?
to get that done, it was not a pretty picture, and everybody knows it, including some very liberal people that cried in my office. They cried in the Oval Office. 2 weeks later, they're out saying, gee, we have to defeat him. Criminal justice reform, prison reform, opportunity zones with Tim Scott, a great senator from South Carolina. He came in with this incredible idea for opportunity zones. It's one of the most successful programs. People don't talk about it. Tremendous investment.
They don't. They don't give him enough credit for it because, they don't want him to look good in any capacity.
Made big.
And even and then the conservative media doesn't talk about it too much because their base is a little racist.
Biggest beneficiary, the black and Hispanic communities, and then historically black colleges and universities. After 3 years of coming to the office, I love some of those guys. They were great. They came into the office and I said, what are you doing? After 3 years, I said, why do you keep coming back? Because we have no funding. I said, you don't have to come back every year. We have to come back because President Obama would never give them long-term funding. And I did. 10-year long-term funding, and I gave them more money than they asked for because they said, I think you need more. And I said, the only bad part about this is I may never see you again because I got very friendly with them, and they like me and I like them. But I saved historically black colleges and universities.
Okay, and we're going to talk about both of your records, but your response to that, Vice President?
My response to that is I never, ever said what he accused me of saying. The fact of the matter is, in 2000, though, after the crime bill had been in the law for a while, this is a guy who said, the problem with the crime bill, there's not enough people in jail. There's not enough people in jail.
Yeah, I looked into that. Apparently that's true. Again, just dumb old white people not understanding the negative impacts. People back in the day are just fucking stupid. They didn't understand the negative impacts of just jailing people rather than providing better social services.
And go on my website, get the quote, the date when he said it. Not enough people. He talked about marauding gangs, young gangs, and the people who were going to maraud our cities. This is a guy who in Central Park five innocent black kids. He continued to push for making sure
that part's
the death penalty. None of
I don't know if he was necessarily pushing for it, but even when it seemed to be a fact that the Central Park 5 didn't do it, Trump was still yeah, I think they did it, which is weird.
None of them were guilty of the crimes they were suggested. Look, and talk about granted, he did in fact let 20 people, he commuted 20 people sentences. We commuted over 1,000 people sentences. Over 1,000. The very law he's talking about is a law that, in fact, initiated by Barack Obama. And secondly, we're in a situation here where the federal prison system was reduced by 38,000 people under our administration. And one of these things we should be doing, there should be no minimum mandatories in the law. That's why I'm offering $20 billion to states to change their state laws to eliminate minimum mandatories and set up drug courts. No one should be going to jail because they have a drug problem. They should be going to rehabilitation, not to jail. We should fundamentally change the system, and that's what I'm going to do.
When you send drug addicts to jail, it doesn't help them because correctional officers aren't trained in how to deal with drug addicts correctly, especially from a mental perspective.
Why didn't he do it 4 years ago? Why didn't you do that 4 years ago, even less than that? Why didn't you
I
do it?
am
You were
not-
vice president. You keep talking about all these things you're going to do, and you're going to do this, but you were there just a short time ago, and you guys did nothing.
We
You know,
did.
Joe, I ran because of you. I ran because of Barack Obama, because you did a poor job. If I thought you did a good job, I would have never run. I would have never run. I ran because of you. I'm looking at you now. You're a politician. I ran because of you.
All right, Vice President Biden, your response to that, and then I do have some questions for both of you.
Well, I'll tell you what, I hope he does look at me, because what's happening here is, you know who I am, you know who he is, you know his character, you know my character, you know our reputations for honor and telling the truth. I am anxious to have this race. I am anxious to see this take place. The character of the country is on the ballot. Our character is on the ballot. Look at us closely.
Let me ask some
Excuse
follow-up.
me.
Please respond,
If
and then we're
this
going to have
stuff
follow-up
is true
questions.
about Russia, Ukraine, China, other countries, Iraq, if this is true, then he's a corrupt politician.
All right.
So don't give me the stuff about how you're this innocent baby. Joe, they're calling you a corrupt politician.
Innocent
No,
baby.
President Trump, I want to say
That kills me, the innocent baby.
the issue of race. We're talking
Look at
about
the
the issue.
laptop from hell.
President Trump, we're
Nobody-
talking about race right now, and I do want to stay on the issue of race. President Trump,
And I
That's
have to
fair.
respond to that.
Please,
Because look,
very
there
quickly.
are 50 former national intelligence folks who said that what he's accusing me of is a Russian plant. They have said that this has all the 5 former heads of the CIA. Both parties say what he's saying is a bunch of garbage. Nobody believes it except his and his good friend Rudy Giuliani.
You mean the laptop is now another Russia hoax?
And
You
that's
gotta be-
exactly
is
what-
this
that's
where you're
exactly
going?
what
This
was
is where
going.
he's going.
That seems a little too convenient that everything is a conspiracy, you know? Although Trump is a conspiracy poopy head.
The laptop is Russia, Russia,
Gentlemen,
Russia.
I want to stay on the issue of race.
You have
okay?
to be kidding. Here we
Mr.
go again
President,
with Russia.
We're going to continue
Boy,
on the
oh,
issue of race. Mr. President,
believe
you've
that one.
described the Black Lives Matter movement as a symbol of hate. You've shared a video of a man chanting white power to millions.
Maybe that's why I'm like so okay with Trump. Someone in my chat was like, he's such a New Yorker, and most American doesn't see that. Like, yeah, I'm a New Yorker too. So like the way Trump acts, like we kind of brush it off out here. He's just a fucking idiot. Like we know when somebody's being an exaggeratory moron in New York. You know, that's just me.
Of your supporters. You've said that black professional athletes exercising their First Amendment rights should be fired. What do you say to Americans who say that kind of language from a president is contributing to a climate of hate and racial strife?
Well, you have to understand, the first time I ever heard of Black Lives Matter, they were chanting, pigs in a blanket, talking about police. Pigs, talking about our police. Pigs in a blanket, fry them like bacon. I said, that's a horrible thing. And they were marching down the street. And that was my first glimpse of Black Lives Matter. I thought it was a terrible thing. As far as my relationships with all people, I think I have great relationships with all people. I am the least racist person in this room.
But what do you say to Americans who are concerned by that rhetoric?
I don't know.
and by
I mean, I
the
don't know
videos?
what to say. I got criminal justice reform done and prison reform and opportunity zones. I took care of black colleges and universities. I don't know what to say. They can say anything. I mean, they can say anything. It makes me sad because I am the least racist person. I can't even see the audience because it's so dark, but I don't care who's in the audience. I'm the least racist person in this room.
Okay, Vice
He's
President.
a fucking colorblind Trump. I can't see it. This is so funny. I can't see anyone in the audience. It's so dark. Especially the black ones. They're even darker. Like, what are you saying? What are you saying right now?
Biden, let me ask you
he
very quickly.
just speaks. He just talks, and it's so dumb and funny.
I have a follow-up question for you.
Abraham Lincoln here is one of the most racist presidents we've had in modern history. He pours fuel on every single racist fire.
That's probably true. Like I said before, socially, Trump is cancer for black people.
Every single one. He started off his campaign coming down the escalator saying he's going to get rid of those Mexican rapists.
Why do I say orange? Arrange like what?
He's banned Muslims because they're Muslims. He has moved around and made everything worse across the board.
I think the Muslim ban was like an overreaction to like a terrorist attack or a terrorist attack in the United States.
He says about the poor boys. Last time we were on stage here, he said, I told him to
The poor boys. I knew something about the Proud Boys.
stand down and stand ready. Come on. This guy is a dog whistle about as big as a foghorn.
President Trump, I'm going to give you 10 seconds to respond, and then I have a follow-up.
He made a reference to Abraham Lincoln. Where did that come in? I mean,
You said
where
you're
did that-
Abraham
No,
Lincoln.
where did that? No.
You said-
I said not since Abraham Lincoln has anybody done.
I mean, you're being a stickler. Trump basically said that Trump suggested he may be better for black people than Abraham Lincoln. He said, like, perhaps better. But remember that before? So, like, you know. Come on.
what I've done for the black community.
And I'm
I didn't
saying-
say I'm Abraham.
And, like, Trump's done good for the black community. Probably one of the better presidents in a while. But, like, it's not so massively impactful that it outweighs the social negatives that he proposes.
Lincoln. I said not since Abraham Lincoln has anybody done what I've done for the black community. Now, you have done nothing other than the crime bill, which put
Oh, God.
tens of thousands of black men, mostly in jail.
All right, let me-
And you know
let me-
what?
let me
They
ask
remember
Vice
it because
President
if you
Biden
look
a
at what's
question.
happening with the voting right now,
Let me ask
they
Vice
remember
President
that you
Biden
treated them
about-
very, very badly.
The-
Just take a look at what's happening out there.
Vice President Biden, let me give you a chance to respond within this context. Crime bills that you supported in the 80s and 90s contributed to the incarceration of tens of thousands of young black men who had small amounts of drugs in their possession. They are sons, they are brothers, they're fathers, they're uncles, whose families are still to this day, some of them suffering the consequences. So speak to those families. Why should they vote for you?
One of the things is that in the 80s, we passed 100%, all 100 senators voted for it, a bill on drugs and how to deal with drugs. It was a mistake. I've been trying to change it since then, particularly the portion on cocaine. That's why I've been arguing that, in fact, we should not send anyone to jail for a pure drug offense. They should be going into treatment across the board.
That's fair. I mean, he's basically saying, hey, we all fucked up. The general consensus back then was that this would be beneficial, and it wasn't, and we messed up, and we're nerds.
That's what we should be spending money on. That's why I set up drug courts, which were never funded by our Republican friends. They should not be going to jail for a drug or an alcohol problem. They should be going into treatment. Treatment. That's what we've been trying to do. That's what I'm going to get done because I think the American people have now seen that, in fact, it was a mistake to pass those laws relating to drugs. But they were not in the crime bill.
But why didn't he get it done? See, it's all talk, no action with these politicians. Why didn't he get it done? That's what I'm going to do when I become president. You were vice president along with Obama as your president, your leader, for 8 years. Why didn't you get it done? You had 8 years to get it done. Now you're saying you're going to get it done because you're all talk and no action, Jim.
We got a
Your
lot of it
response.
done. We released
didn't get
38,000.
anything
We got
done.
38,000 prisoners left from.
You got
out-
nothing done.
38,000 prisoners were released from federal prison. There were over 1,000 people who were given clemency. In fact, we're the ones that put in the legislation saying we could look at pattern and practice of police departments and what they were doing, how they were conducting themselves. I could go on, but we began the process. We lost an election. That's why I'm running to win back that election and change his terrible policy.
I
Quick
just
response,
asked,
and then we're
I
gonna
just
move
asked
on
one
to climate
question.
change.
Why didn't you do it in the 8 years, a short time ago? Why didn't you do it? You just said, I'm going to do that, I'm going to do this. You put tens of thousands of mostly black young men in prison. Now you're saying you're going to undo that. Why didn't you get it done? You had 8 years with Obama. You know why,
Because-
Joe? Because you're all talk and no
Honestly, the reason why he didn't do it is probably because he didn't give a shit. Listen, man, like I keep saying it, but like nobody cares about black people until like you're supposed to care about black people, and unless it gives you like a particular boost in some capacity, nobody's gonna really care about it or focus on it. And there's also a factor that they were dealing with coming out of like the Great Recession, but still.
action.
All right, Vice President Biden, and then we're going to move on to the next section.
We had a Republican Congress.
That's true.
That's the answer.
Well,
Okay.
you got to talk them into it, Joe. Sometimes
All right.
you got to talk them into it.
It's funny because Trump's having trouble talking to Republicans into things. It's just right now, for the relief bill. I don't know. Was that the real reason why? Or are you just kind of saying that to pass it off to the Republicans? Like, because it doesn't sound like you may have proposed anything. I don't remember hearing about anything where like the Republicans denied some kind of a prison reform.
We're
Maybe
going to move
I'm
on to our
wrong.
next section,
Like I
which
did
is
with criminal
climate
justice
change.
reform. I had
Okay.
to talk Democrats into it.
Gentlemen,
did,
we're
but we've
running out
already
of
done
time,
it.
so we got to get on to climate change, please. You both have very different visions on climate change.
Look,
President
he just so snoodily was like, "What time? Oh, we're running out of time."
Trump, you say that environmental regulations have hurt jobs in the energy sector. Vice President Biden, you have said you see addressing climate change as an opportunity to create new jobs. For each of you, how would you both combat climate change and support job growth at the same time? Starting with you, President Trump, you have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
So
Let's do it,
we have the
baby.
Trillion Trees program. We have so many different programs.
I don't know what
do
the
love
fuck that
environment,
is.
But what I want is the cleanest, crystal clear water, the cleanest air. We have the best, lowest number in carbon emissions, which is a big standard that I notice Obama goes with all the time. Not Joe. I haven't heard Joe use the term because I'm not sure he knows what it represents or means, but I have heard Obama use it. And we have
What is happening?
the best carbon emission numbers that we've had in 35 years.
I love it when Trump brings up that we have the best emission numbers, and you want to know why? I bring it like it's so funny to me. It's because you guys have to understand that like we were just locked down for like 6 months, and it had a tremendous positive impact on the environment. People were simply not driving, and it had a massive benefit to the environment. And now he's taking credit for that. It's so funny. It's just funny.
Under this administration, we are working so well with industry, but here's what we can't do. Look at China, how filthy it is. Look at Russia. Look at India. It's filthy. The air is filthy. The Paris Accord, I took us out because we were going to have to spend trillions of dollars, and we were treated very unfairly.
Well, the reason that we're in the Paris Accord was because the reason we were in the Paris Climate Accord is because it gave us power over the way everybody else reacted. It gave us power. That's the thing. Like, it was another way for America to have control over the world. Paris Climate Accord, we have control over how people, push emissions. It gave us control, and it helped have us help other countries, reduce their numbers.
When they put us in there, they did us a great disservice. They were going to take away our businesses. I will not sacrifice tens of millions of jobs, thousands and thousands of companies because of the Paris Accord. It was so unfair. China doesn't kick in until 2030.
Yeah.
Russia goes back to a low standard, and we kicked in right away. It would
That's fair.
have destroyed our businesses. So,
Well, I don't know
you
if
ready?
that's true,
We have
but-
done an incredible job environmentally.
Because of the coronavirus. You can't just, oh, it's just so convenient for you.
The cleanest air, the cleanest water, and the best carbon emission standards that we've seen in many, many years.
Vice President
We
Biden.
haven't destroyed our industries.
And only 200,000 people had to die to do it. Yay. Trump policies.
Vice President Biden, 2 minutes to you, uninterrupted.
Climate change and climate warming, global warming, is an existential threat to humanity.
Sure.
We have
Yeah.
a moral obligation to deal with it. And we're told by all the leading scientists in the world we don't have much time. We're going to pass the point of no return within the next 8 to 10 years. 4 more years of this man eliminating all the regulations that were put in by us to clean up the climate, to limit limit emissions, will put us in a position where we're going to be in real trouble. Here's where we have a great opportunity. I was able to get both all the environmental organizations as well as labor, the people worried about jobs, to support my climate plan. Because what it does, it will create millions of new good-paying jobs. We're going to invest in, for example, 50,000 charging stations on our highways so that we can own the electric car market of the future. In the meantime, China is doing that. We're going to be in a position where we're going to see to it that we're going to take 4 million.
It seems a little extreme to just like put a bunch of charging stations on the highway. Like, why do we need to do that? Like, we can incentivize getting an electric car without having a charging station.
Existing buildings and 2 million existing homes and retrofit them so they don't leak as much energy, saving hundreds of millions of barrels of oil in the process and creating significant number of jobs. And by the way, the whole idea of what this is all going to do, it's going to create millions of jobs, and it's going to clean the environment. Our health and our jobs are at stake. That's what's happening. And right now, by the way, Wall Street firms indicated that my plan will in fact create 18.6 million jobs, 7 million more than his. This is from Wall Street, and I'll create $1 trillion more in economic growth than his proposal does. Not on climate, just on the economy.
President Trump, here.
They came out and said very strongly, $6,500 will be taken away from families under his plan, that his plan is an economic disaster. If you look at what he wants to do, if you look at his plan,
Nothing
his
to do with
environmental
climate.
plan, you know who developed it? AOC plus 3.
Yeah, so the problem here that this is where Trump loses all credibility for this argument. The Green New Deal from AOC was a fucking disaster. It was very expensive, disastrous, unrealistic program that wouldn't have worked. That's the reality. Biden has his own Green New Deal that is substantially more realistic. Rather than net zero emissions by 2030, it's by 2050. Better long-term progress. I liked where I paused it. It looks so silly. And like Trump is now trying to pretend like it's not a different deal. So Trump is being either he's dumb and doesn't understand Biden's perspective, which is possible, or he's just intentionally misrepresenting the facts, which is bad.
They know nothing about the climate. I mean, she's got a good line of stuff, but she knows nothing about the climate.
She knows how to play Among Us, though. Oh, AOC.
They're all hopping through hoops for AOC plus 3. Look, their real plan costs $100 trillion. If we had the
Not
best
true.
year in the history of our country for 100 years, we would not even come close to a number like that. When he says
I mean, we collect $3 trillion a year, right? So that's 33 years. Boom, got it.
buildings, they want to take buildings down because I want to make bigger windows into smaller windows. As far as they're concerned, if you had no window, it would be a lovely thing. This is the craziest plan that anybody has ever seen. And this wasn't done by smart people. This wasn't done by anybody. Frankly, I don't even know how it can be good politically. They want to spend $100 trillion. That's their real number. He's trying to say it was 6. It's $100 trillion. They want to knock down
Just lying.
buildings and build new buildings with little, tiny, small windows. I mean, and many other things.
Okay.
And many other things.
Let me have the Vice President
It
respond,
is
and we're running out of
crazy.
time, and we have a lot more
What?
questions to
Destroy
get
our
to.
country.
So let's hear from the Vice President. I have a number more
I
questions.
don't know where he comes from. I don't know where he comes up with these numbers.
Queens.
$100 trillion. Give me a break. This plan is endorsed by every major environmental group and every labor group. Labor, because they know the future lies. The future lies in us being able to breathe, and they know there are good jobs in getting us there. And by the way, the fastest growing industry in America is the solar energy and wind. He thinks wind causes cancer, windmills. It's the fastest growing jobs, and they pay good prevailing wages, $45-50 an hour. We can
Whoa.
grow and we can be cleaner if we go the route I'm proposing.
President Trump,
Excuse me.
please
We are
respond, and then I have some
We are
follow-ups.
energy independent for the first time. We don't need all of these countries that we had to fight war over because we needed their energy. We are energy
What are
independent.
you talking
I know more
about?
about wind than you do.
Yeah, we've always been like we can be completely independent of the rest of the world, both energy wise and even food wise. But like we're a global economy, so like why do we need that?
It's extremely expensive. kills all the birds. It's very intermittent, got a lot of problems, and they happen to make the windmills in both Germany and China. And the fumes coming up, if you're a believer in carbon emission, the fumes coming up to make these massive windmills is more than anything that we're talking about with natural gas, which is very clean. One other thing.
What? So, I looked into what he's saying. The bird thing might be true, actually. The windmill bird thing actually might have some argument there. I think that they overproject the number of birds that die, but there might be an argument to be made with the windmills. You focus on solar and nuclear. But anyway, when it comes to the emissions, what he's specifically talking about is that there's emissions that go into erecting these windmills and maintaining these windmills, but overall it's substantially less based on like the energy they produce. Like it offsets it, because instead of wind you're going to be using, or rather instead of like gas you're going to be using wind, right? So there's still a net reduction in carbon emissions. Plus, like, let's kill all the birds, they stop shitting on my car.
I love solar, but solar doesn't quite have it
Yeah,
yet.
tell birds to fly higher. These are great. I'm honestly, my chat is really good ideas. Just tell the birds to fly, you know. Fly higher.
Not powerful yet
Fly higher.
to really run our big, beautiful factories that we need to compete with the world. So it's all a pipe dream. But you know what we'll do? We're going to have the greatest economy in the world. But if you want to kill the economy, get rid of your oil industry.
Ban birds from
and
dying.
what about fracking?
All right,
Now-
let me
now we have to ask
let me
him
allow
about
Vice President
I
Biden to
have
respond.
never said I oppose fracking.
You said it on tape.
I did. Show the tape. Put it on your website.
I'll put it on.
Put it on the website. The fact of the matter is,
Show
he's
the
flat lying.
Would you
Flat-
allow
I think that Joe Biden just said that he would ban fracking on government land, and that he wants to do fracking more safely. Kamala Harris is the one who apparently said she wanted to ban fracking.
banning fracking?
I do rule out banning fracking because the answer we need other industries to transition to get to ultimately
Show me the video where he says that he wants to ban fracking. Send it to me.
a complete zero emissions by
Let's see.
2025.
I wanna
what
see
I will
it,
do with
actually.
fracking over time is make sure that we can capture the emissions from the fracking, capture the emissions from gas. We can do that, and we can do that by investing money and doing it. But it's a transition to that.
I have one more question in this pod. and
Excuse me,
we have,
he was against fracking. He said it. I will show that to you tomorrow. I am against fracking. Until he got the nomination, went to Pennsylvania, then he said, but you know what, Pennsylvania? He'll be against it very soon because his party is totally against it.
Fracking on federal land, I said no fracking
You said
and or
fracking.
oil
You
on
didn't say
federal
Let
land.
me ask this
I
final
did.
question in this section, and then I want to move on to our final section. President Trump, people of color are much more likely to live near
What's
oil
the video?
refineries and chemical
Show me the video. You have to send it to me like a review or something. I want to see the video on banning fracking. Somebody send it to me.
plants. In Texas, there are families who worry the plants near them are making them sick. Your administration has rolled back regulations on these kinds of facilities. Why should these families give you another 4 years in office?
The families that we're talking about are employed heavily, and they're making.
Let's see. What is this? Wait, this actually might be it.
Would there be any place for fossil fuels, including coal and fracking, in a Biden administration?
No, we would work it out. We would make sure it's eliminated and no more subsidies for either one of those. I guarantee we're going to end fossil fuel. No new fracking.
I'd gradually move away from fracking.
And I think it's critically important on day one that we end any fossil fuel leases on public lands.
Well, like, what about, say, stopping fracking and stopping pipeline infrastructure and
They want to do the same thing I want to do. They want to phase out fossil fuels, and we're going to phase out fossil fuels.
There's no question I'm in favor of banning fracking.
You guys are aware that that doesn't help Trump's case, right? This doesn't substantiate Trump's claim that Biden. You guys are aware of that, right? What? None of this. So I'm gonna watch this again. Let's watch this again. This is Biden's claim, right? We're currently watching the presidential poopy butts. This is Biden's claim, or rather Trump's claim, that Biden said that he wanted to completely eliminate fracking, like just get rid of it.
Would there
Here it is.
be any place for fossil fuels, including coal and fracking, in a Biden administration?
No, we would work it out.
Work it out doesn't mean eliminate it instantly. It means slowly phase it out. That's not a bad thing to phase out fossil fuels. We should be phasing out fossil fuels slowly and realistically. That's why his Green New Deal is over a period of time.
We would make sure it's eliminated and no more subsidies for either one of those.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if the subsidy thing is great instantly, but like again, he's talking about phasing out like fossil fuels. This doesn't.
I guarantee we're going to end fossil fuel. No
Okay, we're gonna end fossil fuel. We're gonna phase it out.
more, no new fracking.
Yeah, no new fracking. Like, let's dial it back. He said no new fracking on governmental land. They cut it off instantly. I don't know what he may have said after that.
As we move away from
I'd gradually move away from fracking. This is the narrative. He's moving away from fossil fuel.
fracking.
And I think it's critically important on day one that we end any fossil fuel leases on public.
So, first of all, this is Kamala Harris. But second, this is leases, which means, I believe, some kind of subsidy on public lands. Like, that's government land, I believe. I don't know. It's not private lands, I guess if you buy it. But you get, but this is like...
plans.
Well, like, what about, say, stopping fracking and stopping pipeline infrastructure and
Yeah, okay, that's just a very vague...
They want to do the same thing I want to do. They want to phase out fossil fuels. We're going to phase out fossil.
Yeah, phase out. So, like, all of this reinforces, like, us, like gradually reducing fossil fuels. I don't know. Trump couldn't even substantiate his claim.
There's no question I'm in favor of banning fracking.
Yeah, and Kamala Harris is different from Joe Biden. We've already established that Kamala Harris was more aggressive against it. But yeah, this is poop. That wasn't really substantial.
A lot of money, more money than they've ever made.
Just
if you
saying.
Look at the kind of numbers that we produce for Hispanic, for Black, for Asian, it's 9 times greater the percentage gain than it was under in 3 years than it was under 8 years of the two of them, to put it nicely. 9 times more. Now, somebody lives. I have not heard the numbers or the statistics that you're saying, but they're making a tremendous amount of money economically. We saved it, and I saved it again a number of months ago when oil was crashing because of the pandemic. Okay. We saved it. We got, say what you want about relationship, we got Saudi Arabia, Mexico, and Russia to cut back way back. We saved our oil industry, and now it's very vibrant again.
All right.
And everybody has very inexpensive gasoline. Remember
Vice President Biden, your response, and then we're going to have a final question for both of you.
My response is those people live on what they call fence lines. He doesn't understand this. They live near chemical plants that, in fact, pollute, chemical plants and oil plants and refineries that pollute. I used to live near that when I was growing up in Claymont, Delaware. And there are more oil refineries in Marcus Hook and the Delaware River than there is any place, including in Houston at the time. When my mom get in the car when there was first frost to drive me to school, turn in the windshield wiper, there'd be oil slick in the window. That's why so many people in my state were dying and getting cancer. The fact is, those frontline communities, it doesn't matter what you're paying them, it matters how you keep them safe.
That's fair. At the end of the day, we need to take a focus towards, like, making communities less toxic. I mean, you have, you have, like, pollutants going into these areas. Poor people live around factories, and, like, they're dying from, like, different carcinogens. They're killing them. So, like, we need to reduce carbon emissions, not just for all of America, but even for the places that have towns that centralize around the production of these energy sources.
You do.
I mean, you're killing people, and we don't give a shit, right?
Restrictions
Like, we
on
should
the
care.
that the pollutants coming out of those fence line communities.
Okay, I have one final
Would he
question.
close
It
down
falls-
the oil industry?
It falls.
Would you close
it
down the
falls-
oil
By the way, I
industry?
would transition from the oil industry, yes.
Oh,
I would
that's a big
transition.
statement.
It is a big statement.
Yeah, transition from oil industries. That's fine. Slowly transition. Oil is very powerful, and, like, it's something that we should get to a point where we reserve it specifically for military productions, because the military vehicles are going to need, like, oil and gas, right? That's what I would say.
Because I would stop.
Why would you do that?
Because the oil industry pollutes significantly.
I see.
Here's the deal. But
That's
you
a
can't
big
do
statement.
that. Well,
I
if you
see
let me
too.
finish the statement. Because it has to be replaced by renewable energy over time. Over time. And I'd stop giving to the oil industry. I'd stop giving them federal subsidies. You won't give federal subsidies to the gas. Excuse me, to solar and wind. Yeah.
I don't know if we should necessarily stop giving subsidies to these places. I mean, that's a little bit bold, but I like the track you're on.
Why are we giving it to the oil industry?
We actually do
All
give
right.
it to solar and wind.
We
And
have
that's
one
maybe the
final
biggest
question.
statement in terms of business. That's the biggest statement.
Okay.
Because
We have
basically
one
what he's
final
saying is he is
question,
going
Mr.
to destroy the oil industry. Will you remember that, Texas? Will you remember that, Pennsylvania, Oklahoma?
Vice President Biden, let me give you 10 seconds to respond, and then
Ohio.
I have to get to the final question. Vice President Biden.
He takes everything out of context. But the point is, look,
It's
we
true, he
have to
does.
move toward a net zero emissions. The first place to do that by the year 2035 is in energy production. By 2050, totally.
All right. One
Is he
final
gonna get
question
China
for
to do
both.
it?
No, we're finished with
Is
this.
he
We have
going
to
to
move
get
on
China
to
to
our
do it?
final question. We have to
I'm
move on
going to
to our final
rejoin Paris
question.
Accord and make China abide by what they agreed to.
All right,
of
this
course
is
you're
about
drinking milk.
leadership, gentlemen. And this first question does go to you, President Trump. Imagine this is your inauguration day. What will you say in your address to Americans who did not vote for you? You'll each have 1 minute, starting with you, Mr.
We have to make our country totally successful, as it was prior to the plague coming in from China. Now we're rebuilding it, and we're doing record numbers, 11.4 million jobs in a short period of time, et cetera. But I will tell you, go back. Before the plague came in, just before, I was getting calls from people that were not normally people that would call me. They wanted to get together. We had the best black unemployment numbers in the history of our country. Hispanic, women, Asian, people with diplomas, with no diplomas, MIT graduates, #1 in the class. Everybody had the best numbers. And you know what? The other side wanted to get together. They wanted to unify. Success is going to bring us together. We are on the road to success. But I'm cutting taxes, and he wants to raise everybody's taxes, and he wants to put new regulations on everything. He will kill it. If he gets in, you'll have a depression, the likes of which you've never seen. Your 401ks will go to hell, and it'll be a very, very sad day for this country.
All right. Vice President Biden, same question to you.
I mean, the reality is that, you know, unfortunately, Trump's stimulation of the economy is not sustainable. The coronavirus is going to happen regardless, but you see every 10 years we have some kind of recession. So, you know, constantly cutting taxes and not allowing us to generate reserves so that we could pay particular debts off or bail companies out is not a good thing. Every 10 fucking years we have another recession that's generally caused by some form of regulation or tax cut. We got into the last recession before the coronavirus, right? We had the coronavirus recession in 2019, and, you know, 2007 and 8 we're in a fucking another recession. That recession happened due to like unregulated banking and investments. You know what I mean? And it's like we have to get to a point where we have a surplus of money so that when something like this happens, we have the ability to combat it. And it's just not going to happen when we keep jerking off, oh, 401k is doing great, but how sustainable is it? It's not.
What will you say during your inaugural address to Americans who did not vote for you?
I will say, I'm an American president. I represent all of you, whether you voted for me or against me. And I'm going to make sure that you're represented. I'm going to give you hope. We're going to move. We're going to choose science over fiction. We're going to choose hope over fear. We're going to choose to move forward because we have enormous opportunities to make things better. We can grow this economy. We can deal with the systemic racism. And at the same time, we can make sure that our economy is being run and moved and motivated by clean energy, creating millions of new jobs. And that's the fact. That's what we're going to do. And I'm going to say, as I said at the beginning, what is on the ballot here is the character of this country. Decency, honor, respect, treating people with dignity, making sure that everyone has an even chance. And I'm going to make sure you get that. You haven't been getting it the last 4 years.
All right. I want to thank you both for a very robust hour and a half, a fantastic debate. Really appreciate it. President Trump, former Vice President Joe Biden, thank you to Belmont University for hosting us tonight. And most importantly, thank you to those watching tonight. Election Day is November 3rd. Don't forget to vote.
Hell yeah.
Everyone, and have a great night.
So first of all, the moderator was pretty good. But honestly, it's because like it was so fucked last time that they had to regulate it. So like what happened last debate was there was too much talking, so they had to implement mic mutes. And then Trump was like he lost favor from his own people for not shutting the fuck up. Moderator was solid, but it was more that the conditions that were in place that made her look better than like because you know you can't be as good as my boy Christopher Wallace, because I love him. Anyway, outside of that, she did a good job. Outside of that, I know a lot of you guys want to know, Papa, who did better, who won the debate. I have to be honest with you. I don't think that there was a single topic where Biden didn't come out favorably. I don't think that there's any aspect. Any of those topics, you really could not convince me that Trump came out on top. I'm leaning, like at this point, I'm probably gonna vote Biden. There's really just nothing where Trump came out on top. You know, I'm just being honest, man. Just being honest with you. You know, I'm just saying. He's kind of stupid. He's old. He's an old dumb guy. But like, you know, his policies are better. Like when it came to the coronavirus, you know, even if Trump may not have done as bad of a job as we want to say that he has done, it seems like Biden's reopening plans are better because he actually has a plan. When it comes to healthcare, Biden actually has a plan. When it comes to reducing emissions, Biden actually has a plan. The thing is that Trump doesn't have any plans. Like, he talks a lot, but like, what is his healthcare plan? Nothing. What is his reopening plan? Nothing. He has no actual plan. It's just like, yeah, we should reopen, but there's no plan. Like, yeah, they're creating a vaccine, but anybody would have done that. There's no distinguishable plan from the Trump administration on like any issue. And like, How am I supposed to be expected to vote for Trump? How am I supposed to be expected to vote for Trump when he has nothing of substance to offer me? He's not saying, hey, I have here's my plan for single-payer health care insurance. Here's my plan to reopen the country and to make sure that the cases don't go up. Here's my plan for the environmental protections. Here's my plan for this, man. He's not giving me anything. Trump's not giving me anything. He's got no plan. You know? So even if Biden's plan sucks, at least he has a plan. Honestly, Trump's plan is like, hey, look at me. I'm Donald Trump. That's his whole plan. And there's nothing to support. There's nothing for me to fucking support. I got nothing. I got nothing. There's nothing there. I'm just saying. Trump, you didn't come into this debate with a single shred of anything. So I'm gonna play the alerts. What's going on, guys? I'm reading the chat. Oh my goodness, what an interesting recap. I want to say thank you so much, guys, to all my Patreons, and a special shout out to my Papa XL Patreons. Without all you guys, I would just be some fat dude screaming into a microphone. So thank you so much, guys. Mwah. I love you all. I want Papa Gut to pee on my face, but just as a friend. There's nothing weird about that. I want him to pee on my face.